Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. This is Sound Talk, the home of where politics is, and the home where they give us the way to understand our politics and to rule over it and to get know more about what's going on with our nation or what's happening to our nation. I want to welcome you all. Feel free, feel part and parcel of this. As even we're having the great conversation tonight. For tonight, we are having the conversation about the ODM party. The ODM party has been having some hiccup, having some things running around. But tonight I want to check about the ODM because today is the day that they've been endorsing their leader, and also today they've been there on the press briefing, giving out their details or more about it. I want to listen from you, to hear from you, so that we can know where our Chama is going or where ODM is going, and it's good. So I'll be hosting this one, be joining up with other panelists on the other side of the studio. Please join them also, join them with you too, so that they can have great conversation, or we can have great conversation together. I want to hear your opinions too, all about ODM. What is it about ODM? What do you think is going on with ODM? Or where do you think the state is running to? Please welcome, feel free, feel part and parcel of this. Yesterday you were checking about the story of Ruto joining up, where there's somebody said yesterday that Ruto should join up the party, while the manager reacted differently towards the story. Also, other reports giving out their other different opinion, giving out other opinions according to their minds, according to their feelings, and according to their emotions too. So I want to hear from you also today. Tell me please where you're watching me from, and also tell me your views too towards that. But today on the show that we're checking more towards the ODM party, because we try to check about the future without the Raila. Now we are trying to build up the home without Raila or without Baba inside the picture. Without the Baba to bring the alignment, without Baba bringing the negotiation, without Baba being there now. The father is there, is no more. Now it's the kids now to do the thing. So we want to check more to this as we checking out how do you think the kids should do the things, or how do you think they should analyze it. I want to welcome you all. Feel free, feel part and parcel of this as even we're having the conversation. Please just tell me your opinions too, because your opinion matters too, and our opinions are great too. And that will be good so that we can have this conversation together as we're moving on. I will play a couple of videos that will bring up the alignment and checking towards it, so that we can know, we just know where our nation is going or is heading to.
Shall pursue all causes he dedicated his life to, do everything within our power to uphold the unity of the party and apply lessons learned from our departed leader and comrade in the service of the people of Kenya, who he loved and fought for. We reiterate the commitment of the party to the broad-based government until 2027, a relationship guided by the 10-point agenda entered into for the sake of peace and stability of the country. Rest in peace, Baba. Rest in peace, our party leader. Rest in peace, the people's president and comrade, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. That we endorse Honorable Dr. Oburu Oginga as the new acting party leader and urge the party rank and file to accord him all the necessary support and cooperation to enable him guide the party through this difficult time. That in honor of his legacy as a unifier who brought together people of all shades of views and from diverse social, economic, geographical backgrounds, ODM shall continue on the path of embracing diversity and continue the struggle for equity, justice, and peace here at home and beyond our borders. That in line with the wishes and demands of millions of Kenyans whose lives he touched, the party will hold memorial services in many different parts of the country to enable those many admirers interact with and with his sudden departure. Memorial venues or the memorials are planned for the following areas. We will start with Kilifi County, will be in Magarini on 2nd and 3rd of next month. Then we will do Homa Bay and Migori on the 5th and 6th respectively. That given the love Right Honorable Raila had for ODM, we believe he has joined the nearest branch of ODM in heaven. We shall honor him here on earth by strengthening existing branches and opening new ones to allow as many of his supporters as possible stay closely with him via the party. That as part of the strengthening and spreading the reach of the party, the ODM at 20 celebrations will proceed on the 14th, 15th, and 16th of November in Mombasa County, accompanied by activities aimed at cementing the unity and solidarity within the party. All committees that had been tasked with preparations for the events are asked to immediately resume those preparations, and the chairperson of the planning committee, the Honorable Junet, is here.
We'll discuss that later on, but for now, let's talk about a bit of politics. And the Orange Democratic Party has announced that it will stay in President William Ruto's broad-based government until 2027. The Central Committee of the opposition party, which held its first meeting since the death of its founder, late Raila Odinga, also formally installed Siaya Senator Oburu Oginga as its new party leader. Seth Olale followed the proceedings in Nairobi.
I'm on this side, leader.
I think here.
ODM's new party leader Oburu Oginga chaired his inaugural Central Committee meeting 9 days after being installed as the new party boss by the National Executive Committee. The 6-hour-long meeting, comprising of the party's top brass, culminated with a resolution that was read by the party's Secretary General Edwin Sifuna.
That we endorse Honorable Dr. Oburu Oginga as the new acting party leader and urge the party rank and file to accord him all the necessary support and cooperation to enable him guide the party through this difficult time.
The highest management organ of the party, announcing that it will stay in President William Ruto's broad-based government until 2027.
We reiterate the commitment of the party to the broad-based government until 2027, a relationship guided by the 10-point agenda entered into for the sake of peace and stability of the country.
The opposition party denying claims of rifts within the party's hierarchy over its cooperation with President William Ruto's government.
We may not always speak the same language, but we certainly know how to avoid the pitfalls of division that may happen on our path.
ODM's Central Committee also resolving to, among others, hold memorial service for the late Raila Odinga in Magarini in Kilifi County, Homa Bay and Migori, as well as stage ODM's 20th anniversary celebrations on the 14th, 15th and 16th of November.
We believe that the best way for the national government to honor the late Raila Odinga is to release the money owed to the party so that our programs can run and the legacy of our leader can remain secure.
The Orange Democratic Movement leadership says that even as it maintains its cooperation with President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza alliance, it will still forge for the aspirations and dreams its immediate former party leader stood for. Seth Olale, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
This is what's happening with Azmio ODM, not Azmio ODM generally. I want to hear from you. I want to listen from you. Please, what is your opinions too? What's your take to? Do you think that your ODM is getting lost or ODM is still on the track? Or where do you think the ODM is going? Because this is so hierarchy. I want to hear from you, please. What do you think ADM is going? Where do you think ADM is heading to? Or what do you see the future of ODM by now? I want you to tell me, please. Just tell me, where do you see the future of ODM? Or how do you see ODM working things out? Do you think they will work out the way they are expecting? Or do you think things will turn around? Or do you see things that ODM has lost it? Because this is it's highly controversial a little bit, and making things to ODM look differently from what we know the ODM is. We know the ODM is an organized party. ODM has been together. Despite everything, Baba has been making sure that ODM is united. Baba has been making sure that every time they have conflict, he stands there like the Baba he is. And then he tried to solve everything, bring everything to our alignments, bring everything to stand it, bring everything to order. So I'm asking, do you think that because now Baba is no more, things will be coming to order? Sifuna is trying to make sure that the party is standing out, is trying to stand out, press briefing it, giving the party the responsibility that Baba gave out, saying that he would like the party to run like this way, that somebody could not come and divide them, and somebody could not come and deviate them from the path. So that means he's trying to tell them like, oh, it's ODM, we need to stay focused, we need to stay on the path. That's what Stephen is trying to say, saying that we still want to remain the Baba's legacy. We still want to do it. Okay, what do you think about it? Do you think that ODM will still stand it? Or will have the division? Because we have some people who are young in ODM, we have others who are older in ODM. Do you feel the younger will say that now, okay, we have supported the older people, now we want the younger? Okay, do you think the elders will say now, oh, we still need an older person to roll up the Azmi? Or okay, they have already selected the leader who will take him out or will be rolling up that meal. Do you feel like that will be the best thing? Okay, apart from that one, do you feel like as mere ODM will still stand strong to fight for its rights, will still stand strong not to be shaken or not to be able with politics that are being raised up? Do you feel that they will not have the war and the departing from the party from other people? Because yesterday one woman said that if we allow Ruto to come to ODM, we have Ruto to allow Ruto to come and lead you, we will lose it. And we have seen now today saying that we will still be in the government, support President Ruto up to 2027, then we'll come out to emerge and stand now, try to vie for it. This is now the words that they are being spoken to as new today. Well, no, not to ODM today. They will still support by Uru, like the way Baba said. That's what the words until 2027. Do you think that 2027 now they will depart and come stand still? Or do you think after 2027 some of the leaders will remain in Kenya Kwanza and others will go back to ODM, or others will do what it is? Because right now we have seen the collapsing of ODM, even in whether the ODM used to be the major deal. If they were the places that ODM used to be major deal, people are even afraid to take the tickets. Even there are people afraid to take the tickets. This shows the Chama is on the verge. This shows that there's high chances or the high possibility of people leaving ODM. This shows that there are high chances of many Kenyans departing from ODM. See, same even the people, if you can see the Mwananchi Association want to say that mimi mkiruhusu Ruto akuje ODM, eri ni wache ama eri nitoke nini? Eri nitoke ODM. This is so serious because Mwananchi can't just wake up one morning and they begin saying that mkiruhusu Ruto akuje ODM, mimi nitatoka ODM. Mkiruhusu Ruto wa monitor ODM, munyu wanawazungusha kama nani. Let us watch this video again today. This was what the woman said.
Kati ya Ruto na Sifuna, nani anaweza lead ama nani anafaa kulead ODM? Tumieni akili. Sifuna ameran na baba. Mpaka Raila Odinga alikuwa anasema, Sifuna akisema ni ODM imesema. ODM ikisema ni Sifuna amesema. Sasa hizi mnakuja kutuambia ati Ruto amekuja tena kuwaibia ODM. My friend, acha kutupima akili. Mimi nimefought for 15 years for ODM. 15. Nimeanguka na baba mara ngapi? 3. Hatujawahi kuwa president. Alafu sasa hivi eti mnakuja kutuambia Ruto anakuja kusema sasa hivi eti alikuwa member. Ameharibu, imagine. Ameharibu kwake. Sasa hizi anataka kuja kuharibu ODM. My friend, mkiweka Ruto ODM, inaitwaje? ODM. Ruto inaenda kubaki na wabunge 5 kama venye Fort Kenya na nili ibaki na wabunge 5 Western. Inaenda kukufa my friend. Na kama mtatuambia Ruto atakuja saa hii ODM, sisi tunasarenda kama member ODM. Sisi tulikuwa tumefuata baba Raila Odinga. Na si mtuambie ati Ruto. Who is Ruto?
So that's the complete from that mama saying that ukifanya hivyo yeye anatoka ODM. Kama ukifanya hivyo yeye ako ready to leave ODM. She feels like that. She feels like that he should not be done justice when they agree like that or they do something like that. If people feels like that, or if that's the opinion too, because everyone has also an opinion, and then we have the freedom to be here, have our own opinions. What's your opinion too? Do you feel like everything should be like it? Do you feel everything shall go to the straight line? Do you feel like everything shall stand to it? Or do you feel like things will not go to the right direction? Eh? What is it all about? What is this all about? What is this all revolving towards to? Eh? Because we can say, be just saying it, taking it easily, while it is a bigger issue that we're supposed to handle. It's a bigger issue that we're supposed to bring to the alignment. It's a bigger issue that we're supposed to bring to the path. What do you feel about this? What do you think will happen to ODM? What do you think will happen to Chungwa? Tutakula ichungwa alafu tusahau, ama tutakula ichungwa na tupalilie mengine ili aweze kuwa? When some people will be leaving ODM, will we having people still standing in the deal or in the gap for ODM? Or when those people will leave ODM, the ODM will remain empty without people? So please, I want to check out that, and I want to listen from you too. What is perspective, or where do you think ODM is going? ODM is a very amazing party, being there for long. Some people have paid sacrifice for the ODM, like Baba. What do you think the one who are right now should do to make ODM better and improve, to become more, or to fulfill the ambition and the vision from Baba? I think that's the best idea that we can share on it. Let us see this.
Right now, my guest already with me in studio is talking about the state of human rights, and I'll start from my immediate right, Irungu Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya. Thank you for making time.
Good evening.
Next is Neema Mutemi, Positive Youth Development Expert. Thank you for making time.
Good evening.
And Joshua Nyamori, Advocate of the High Court. Thank you for making time.
Good evening.
And Irungu, I'll start with you. What is your assessment of the state of human rights? We've seen complaints right from the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, Mary Lola, saying that her letters have been ignored. And especially this was in regards to the protests and the human rights abuses at that time. We know Njagi and Oyo are still missing to date. Uganda says they don't have them. Kenya seems to be a bit silent on that. What is the state of human rights in your assessment?
No, I think it's highly regrettable that the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights Defenders issued that statement, but it was somewhat expected in many ways. I think June and July were probably the most violent months we've seen in a few years. The attacks on protesters were very directed, and there was a tremendous amount of excessive use of force. We lost 47 people, I think, in about 6 hours on Sabasaba Day. We also saw the increasing use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act against protesters, and many people found themselves essentially incarcerated, detained for long periods of time without bail terms that they could even raise. This morning, the Law Society 50 plus million campaign plus Amnesty International were at Makadara, and we were successful in our attempt to bring down the bail terms for 7 persons who had been arrested on Sabasaba Day, and they had initially been charged and given bail terms of 100,000, and they have been 5 out of the 7 who didn't have NGOs to pay for their bail terms have actually been in detention essentially for 103 days because they couldn't raise the bail terms. So I think Mary Lawler's commentary really should be a wake-up call for the government. I don't know if people are listening, and I don't know whether there will be a response to the case, but obviously what's going to happen next is it will be referred to the UN Human Rights Council, and there, unfortunately, Kenya will find itself as a member of the council also being a subject of the council, and that is deeply regrettable.
Irungu, have you heard anything from Oyo and Njagi? Because the statement earlier on today seemed to speak to the fact that they are not in good health as if there's someone in touch with them, because the government of Uganda says they don't have them. They don't know where they are. The government of Kenya doesn't say anything. This statement alluded to seemingly some conversation. Have you heard anything from that?
Yes, I was part of the press conference with Vocal Africa and Law Society this afternoon, and we deliberately chose to escalate the sense of urgency around their case. It's been 26 days since they were picked in broad daylight by people who wore uniforms. The eyewitness accounts suggest that they were people in police and armed uniforms, so therefore they were not picked by strangers. They were picked by state operatives of the Ugandan government, and attempts to file a habeas corpus have essentially brought no relief to their families. So therefore we are very concerned. Informally, we have heard from people who have a bit more information from within Kampala that they're in very bad shape, and that the concerns of torture, concerns of intimidation, and also just the general lack of access to them is a matter of major concern. I think the words that were used by Vocal Africa Director Hussein Khalid, I think were very important for me. He talked about, at this stage, the Kenyan government must demand for a proof of life. But unfortunately, in the last 2 weeks, we've seen very little action publicly, and we have seen no public statement by the government of Kenya. It is almost like they have just been released to the Ugandan government to do what they may be. And I think that is a tremendous shame for this country, given that we have a foreign policy that is based on the principle of national sovereignty. I can't believe 2 Kenyans could be held for so long, and there is not an uproar anyway. I just want to if I can just do this, I just want to hold up a banner that we have put out there. This QR code, if we can zoom in on the QR code, it takes you to a place where you can write a letter calling for the release of Bob, Jage, and also Nick. So I'm just asking Kenyans to please continue their emails and their concerns, because we have to bring them home.
Okay. Nema, what do we seem to be getting wrong as a country as you give your assessment of human rights? Because the reason why I asked that question is, in as much as the bail terms were reviewed for the young people incarcerated for alleged protest and destruction of property, the destruction of property did happen. Except now we're arguing that those in custody are not the ones who did it. So how then, where do you draw the line? How do you know then who did it? And what do we keep getting wrong as a country when it comes to dealing with human rights?
Okay, that's a tough one, and it's a layered question, Trevor. So I want to begin with, from the definition of, we can't talk about human rights without looking at what kind of country we have. Are we, by definition, a democracy? Do we believe in neoliberal rights? Do we believe in civil liberties? Because if we can't, as Kenyans, say without question what kind of state we live in, what kind of country we've agreed to be living in, and what kind of governance system that we have, then that question ceases to apply. This question is not, the state of human rights doesn't apply if you're living in a non-dictatorial state, if you're living in in a caliphate, or whatever other systems there are. So we need to start challenging ourselves in terms of, have we signed up for whatever is going on right now? So let's go back to civil liberties. Freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of political association, freedom of worship. These are not basic human rights. They're not basic rights that are guaranteed under the Declaration of Human Rights, but they are civil liberties that Kenya, since 1972, has ascribed to. Every Kenyan has the right to associate with whoever they want to participate politically, be it in Kenya or in Uganda or in Tanzania, where they feel like they're East African citizens. They all are guaranteed those rights. No one has a right to kidnap them. No one has a right to remove them from one of those countries where they are legally to any other country, including returning them to Kenya without their consent or illegally. So those the reason we fight for these liberties is because the description of the country we think we've subscribed to by birth and those who naturalize is because Kenya has already signed up for this. When you look at now the issue of terrorism, when talking about civil liberties again, there are demarcations. So even when you are dealing in matters of national security or protecting the state from individuals you believe to be dangerous, like in the case of terrorism and terrorist acts, which is one of the most serious charges you can face in this country, the state, as a neoliberal democracy, has certain boundaries within which it should operate to keep Kenyans safe from those individuals. So even when you're dealing with known terrorists, you need to balance the tactics of security with the assurances of keeping Kenyans safe and safeguarding their liberties. Okay. So we are not saying that do not prosecute people who have banned shops. We are not saying, do not prosecute people who clobbered people in the streets, because we do know that those things happen. What we are saying is you need to ensure that every Kenyan is prosecuted in line with the rule of law, and we actually just want proof that the state is not violating people's rights in the name of cracking down on crime, because let's just call it a crime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nyamori, is there an overreach by the state, so to speak? Are they missing the mark here by being overbearing on people?
Definitely, there have been certain aspects of overreach. We have had cases in which, people have died in custody, and there have been excessive use of force. But I think, as Nema is mentioning, there is also the element that we as a citizenry, we have to get to the point in which we exercise our rights, but we also protect the state. The rights will never exist without the state. And I think this is a narrative, and these are issues that Kenyans should discuss about, that we need to have space to exercise our civil liberties, but we also ensure that we exercise them in a manner that would protect the state, to ensure we have Kenya tomorrow. We also appreciate that we need to build systems, and we need to, transform the security agencies. It takes more than just, throwing words at them and expecting that they would be changed. I always give the example that one day, when I was still a young activist, I went to the PPO's office in Kisumu to protest about human rights abuses by the security forces. And then, then PPO Kaindi, she later became the DIG, told me is that, Nyamori, unfortunately, what you are saying is the right thing that needs to be done. But what we are doing is what we are trained at Kiganjo. Okay, so what that means is that we need to change the entire philosophy of policing. We need to change the curriculum. We need to humanize the policemen and the policewomen. We need to support them, to give them the necessary equipment to do crowd controls. And then we need to build relationship between, the security agencies and the people. But even as we do this, we need to ensure that we maintain high standards with regard to maintenance of human rights and accountability matters.
And Irungu, you mentioned that you're surprised that there's not an uproar now, and it's 26 days since Njagi and Oyo have been missing. Are the people themselves accomplices to this? Because it's true what you're saying. We haven't seen much of a conversation from the Kenyans themselves, despite two of their own citizens missing.
No, I wouldn't say they were complicit. I think partly to say that would be somehow to allege that Kenyans, 56 million Kenyans conspired to kidnap Bob and Nick off the streets of Kampala. No, I don't think that's the case. What I do think is that Kenyans are increasingly becoming very weary in the sense of being tired of the number of human rights violations that we're seeing on a daily basis. I've often said that if you're paying attention in Kenya today, there has to be a level of trauma that you have to manage on a daily basis in order to continue to be optimistic, to continue to be engaged, and to believe that tomorrow can be a better day. Just to give an example, we talked a little bit, Joshua talked a little bit about, the cases of, police custody cases. There have been 18 police deaths, deaths in police custody in the last one year. Just in this year alone. If we go back to the funeral of the late Raila Odinga, we saw 6 human beings essentially killed and tens of people tear gassed and beaten. I think over 65 people had to be treated for injuries during the 2 Kasarani and Nyayo events. Why were police using live bullets at that time? So I think there is a sense in which people are getting increasingly exhausted, and therefore it's not so much complicity, it's just people's hearts are breaking. And I think what's most dangerous for us is when people stop believing in the Constitution, they stop believing in their state, they stop believing in elections, for example, then you start to create the conditions for anarchy. And once that anarchy begins to set in, then it is very difficult to do the kind of thing that Joshua is talking about, which is, to have a functional human rights-based state that is respectful of the rights of Kenyans. So I think that's the challenge that we've got. For the people of Kiambu, who over the last 2 or 3 months essentially have seen something like about 130 infants and 5 mothers die because of essentially a strike to protest against the lack of drugs or the lack of medicine and the withdrawal of 600 medical interns and the general collapse of our health system. That's tremendous stress on many Kenyans, and I think that's what we have to address very quickly, because I think as the ground begins to feel that these things are normal, that it is okay to essentially storm a police station or to storm a law court, then you are in a different scenario altogether. And we know from our region what that looks like. So it is really important, particularly for the state, to continuously have this sense of duty, this sense of obligation, this sense of human rights, because every time a state officer breaks those laws, what they do essentially is send a message to everybody that they can break the law. Okay. And that's why I think there cannot be a culture of impunity in this country. That's why police officers must be held accountable. Yeah. And it is shocking. Up to now, we've not seen any police officers arrested for the 6 deaths during the funeral period of Raila Odinga.
Okay, I use that term accomplice, and it's a rather strong term, like you.
It was good. You got me going there.
Because because it's from an author, George Orwell once said this, that people that vote for corrupt politicians are not victims. They are accomplices. Right. So when 2 of your own are not there, nobody's saying anything. In fact, let me bring up a tweet from one of the senators, Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei, and see what he's saying. If we can push this to this on the side so that we can see it properly and see what he's saying on this. That is Senator Kiprotich Arab Cherargei, that is Cherargei speaking to us. And he said that, I want to urge Kenyans, especially busybody activists, to avoid going to friendly neighboring countries and start to meddle in the internal local politics. This will reduce cross-border abductions and enforced disappearances, because other countries have different ways of handling internal dissidents. It isn't like Kenya, where it's free for all. This is especially as Tanzania and Uganda head for their general elections in the coming days and months. Kenyans should only visit these countries for tourism, education, medical and businesses, etc., while keeping off internal politics and human rights. What is your reaction?
Trevor, can I help you?
Yeah, you can go, Nema.
And what Irungu is describing, and even captured in that tweet, is that sadly, Kenya and East Africa, actually, let's talk about Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. We're living in a perpetual state of state-sanctioned terrorism. By definition, let me read out for you this definition of terrorism. Terrorism is first and foremost a psychological tactic. Its aim is not to destroy, but rather to induce a general state of fear and collapse, the ultimate purpose of which is the eradication of solidarity, cooperation, and interdependence upon which social cohesion and functioning depend. The hope is that eventually the community will be reduced to pockets of frightened individuals concerned only with their personal safety and thus isolated from their wider social context. That's a 1972 definition by Hutchinson. I'm a scholar when it comes to terrorism. So when you actually look at what Cherargei is describing, is exactly that. Can you just go to Uganda to only attend the association of SME, muungano wa kujisaidia, go to Uganda to look at, the mountains, Ruwenzori, but don't you dare think that you have a right to engage politically. It's a very small-minded opinion. It is shameful that a member, an elected member would talk like that. I'm 40, Trevor. I'm 40, and today there's a daily headline that talks about Kenya and sanctions for human rights. I've lived in this country for 40 years without ever imagining that Kenya would ever go through what we've seen with, Zimbabwe, UN sanctions. Can you imagine a world in which we wake up and we who host, one of the largest UN headquarters are actually sanctioned? Do you know the cost of living? So to imagine that young people in 2025 can actually, the state can limit the extent to which they can relate, they can associate, they can even imagine the muungano. Why are you forcing us to sing the East African anthem in every public meeting if you do not want us to associate? Okay. And it's also very misguided for a member of parliament to talk like that, because if you read the East African Charter, the apex of integration for the East African community is actually political integration. So the envisioning is that we will have one political, what would you call it? I don't know.
Ideology, so to speak.
Ideology, a unified one. So economic integration is the first and soft launch, and then you're supposed to integrate socially, and then the idea is that within time we will actually have one, like the EU, we would have one point of lawmaking, similar policies addressed across board. So why should Kenyans be worried about what's happening in our neighboring countries? Because we can only be as good as the sum total of the least democratic country in that muungano. Okay.
Nyamori, who's violating the EAC Charter here? Is it our people who are meddling, so to speak, in other people's elections, or is it the people who are abducting our people when they're in their country? Who's violating the EAC Charter here?
Sometimes analysis and interpretation of some of these laws and instruments depends on the time and place of the person interpreting it. Definitely, the EAC is charter, and the entire integration is embedded on human rights, rule of law, good governance. And so that is what we are called upon as citizens of the three countries to uphold and to pursue. But then at the same time, it is important to appreciate that the same instruments also call on sovereignty of the states. And, I like being practical when discussing this, that Kenya is far much ahead of the region in terms of the rule of law and human rights, despite the various challenges that we are facing, and that our neighbors are not so good with regard to rule of law and human rights. And it is our responsibility as a country. And Bob Njagi and Nicholas, you are my friends. And I hope they will come home. I've worked with them on advocacy for many years. It pains me just like it pains any other Kenyan that how many days now? 21? 26. They are not back. I'm hoping that our government will continue to work with the community structures and the Ugandan government to trace them and get them home alive and well. But having worked and traveled around these countries, I think it is not far-fetched for us to caution our citizens that it is not safe out there, okay? To promise them that they will be safe in Malakal, in Rumbek, in Gulu, and other parts of the region, when we know that the human rights standards in those countries, that the systems in those countries ain't working as good as ours, even though we also have problems, would be to cheat our citizens and let them walk into, the jaws of lions. I say this because one time I remember I went to Kampala to do an evaluation for a human rights program, for a Swedish funded program. And I had meetings with human rights organizations in Kampala. Then the following day I traveled to Gulu. And when I got to Gulu, I checked into my hotel, then went out to the supermarket. When I came back, I was told that the LC4 wants to meet me. When I was taken to the LC4's office, told me that they had received report from Kampala that I had been in Kampala for 3 days, and that I left Kampala in the morning. They want to know what I'm doing in Gulu. Okay, so I had to avail all the documentation and invite them to the meetings that I was going to. That is what kept me safe. So I would want to look Kenyans straight in the eye and tell Kenyans, it's not safe out there. Most of these countries are basically collapsed states, okay? We cannot do what we do in the streets of Kisumu, Nairobi, and Mombasa in some of these places. And it's just important that we speak to our people the truth. But even as we call on our government to continue working with the regional structures and the Ugandan government to trace and bring my friends Oyo and Bob Njagi home. That's my view.
Okay, I have to take a quick break. I'll come to you, Runga. I know I started with you. I'll come with you in just a bit. And keep your views coming at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Citizen Monday Report. I'll see you in just a short while. Taking a quick commercial break. We're back with more.
TV. A painless hard mass on the breast that has irregular edges is more likely to be cancer. However, breast cancers can also present as soft, round, tender, or even painful lumps. Should you notice these signs or any other irregularity with your breast, go for a medical checkup as soon as possible. This message is brought to you by Royal Media Services. We care.
It's big, bigger than you can imagine. imagine. It's massive. It's the biggest jackpot. Shabiki Super Jackpot Sahini 100 million. Yes, predict 17 games na 99 bob na ujishikie 100 million. Bonuses ni from 13th correct prediction. Na ukipata zote wrong, usiwori, bado kuna bonus. Hii ndio jackpot. Shabiki Super Jackpot is now at 100 million. To play, download app ya Shabiki on Play Store or SMS SJP to 29063.
Gaming is addictive. Play responsibly. Not for persons under the age of 18. Shabiki.com is authorized and regulated by BCLB. License number BK 0001080.
All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. We're still discussing the state of human rights and like to go into the solutions now. But before we get to that, Irungu, you know, nobody's excusing the cavalier attitude in which the government has handled the abduction of Oyo and Jagi. But does a tweet like the one from Senator Cherargei, does he have a point that we shouldn't bury our heads in the sand thinking that our neighbors are necessarily friendly? We've seen this even with the Tanzanian president. She used very strong terms when some of our activists were actually abducted and tortured. She alluded to the fact that we're taking our bad manners to them. Should we continue burying our heads in the sand that our neighbors will necessarily be neighborly as we expect? Or should we just face reality that they're not, and therefore we stay within our borders?
No, I think the case of Boniface Mwangi, Agatha Tuhiere, the case of Bob Jage, the case of Nicholas Oyo are really narratives around a commitment to fight for an East African community in which human rights are protected, where trials are fair trials, that you can't just decide your political opponent needs to be slapped with a treason charge and then lock them up for the duration of an election campaign period. That's what I think some of these Kenyans were trying to argue in the neighborhood, in those neighborhoods. So I think we shouldn't beat around the bush saying that somehow they were naive or that they didn't understand what they were doing. They were actually essentially fighting for an East African community that is consistent with all the things that we hear whenever the East African Legislative Assembly is meeting, in all the documents, the Constitutive Act of the East African community. These are all, I guess, statements and aspirations of a better regional cooperation than we have currently. That's, I think, what the intention was. Right now, for Senator Cherargei to say that somehow they deserved what happened to them, what happened in Tanzania, what is now happening to Bob and Nick, I think is actually offensive, and I think we should just reject it very quickly. The only thing that I would accept from his statement is his congratulatory comment to those of us who continue to campaign for their release as busybodies. I'm glad that he's seeing the energy. We will continue and we will get louder as long as our people are not protected and as long as our government doesn't protect them as well. So that's the issue. I think there's also a degree of honesty that we must introduce into this process. We somehow seem to forget that leaders like President Kagame spent a lot of time in Uganda. Yeah, they grew up in Uganda. Museveni spent a lot of time in Kenya, right, when he was escaping the horrific violations under Idi Amin and so on. And Salva Kiir, also was based in Kenya for many years. Milton Obote spent time in Tanzania. So to suddenly just pretend like somehow we are different from each other is actually ahistorical and not very helpful. I think what we have always said is that good neighborliness, the perfect neighbor, is the neighbor that provides sanctuary for those that are fleeing persecution, that are fleeing violence from their countries. And Kenya has been that for many years. When the Kenya Kwanza government came to power, with the exception of very limited small number of cases, like, for example, Samson Tekle Michael or Agri and Dong from South Sudan, we had seen very much an attempt to try and protect refugees and asylum seekers in this country. And then we saw the rendition, the refoulement of the Turkish refugees. And then we saw Kizza Besigye. Then we saw saw 37, forum activists from Kisumu. And now what we're seeing is it seems like everybody can kidnap each other's citizens, and there is no sense of respect for each other's citizens. So I think that's the challenge now, that we have to continue to push for an East African community that actually upholds human rights uniformly, and it doesn't matter whether you're Ugandan, Kenyan, Tanzanian, or Rwandese, or Burundian, or from the DRC. You have the same level of human rights as each other.
And Nema, it is an offensive assertion, but it is a conversation that is being had anyway, that should we just keep this within our borders at a time when political tension is rising with our neighbors because they're facing elections, let's face it. And we've seen countries like Nepal, Madagascar, Indonesia go up in flames because of the rising youthful voices. Is it far-fetched for us to believe that this is the time where we should keep it within our borders?
This is precisely the time you should allow young people or activists or whoever you think are busybodies to explore and to coordinate and cooperate, because there's no script. No single country can actually say they have it figured out. Trevor, President Barack Obama ran for president twice. He ran for senator. Do you know how many Kenyans went and volunteered in his campaign in the US? What if something happened? Would you say that they had no right to operate there? We've got hundreds, if not thousands, of young Canadians who volunteer for Bernie Sanders campaigns. If you ever want to see change, you've got to allow people to make use of their mobilization capacity. Right? So what we're seeing from President Suluhu, from President Museveni, from President Ruto, is manifestation, and their respective administrations, is the manifestation of fear. And this fear is the fear of Gen Z's capacity to mobilize. Honestly, when you see young people mobilizing themselves and showing up for somebody who Shah has failed, or mobilizing and showing up for young Gen Zs who can't afford legal representation, that is frightening to the administrations. But that's not an excuse. And for Senator Terigai, I'd actually like to read this for him. This is my passport. It's issued by Kenya, but it's an East African passport. The very first sentence of this passport is this: this is to request and require, in the name of the President of the Republic of Kenya, all those whom it may concern, to allow the bearer of this pass freely, without let or hindrance, to afford the bearer such assistance and protection as may be necessary. So the first violation in the abduction of Bob and Nicholas is to the sovereignty of Kenya and to the President of Kenya. That the first, we travel in the name of the President if you're carrying this passport.
So that's
yes.
This passport is not specifically yours. Like, you mean all Kenyans have
Yes.
So people watching should actually check their passports.
Please check your passports. If you doubt me, it's not my words.
Nick and Bob traveled with this.
Entered Uganda with a passport that reads this. Yeah. So tell me, what does that mean? Because that's what I want. In fact, the senator, let's give him a little bit of credit. He has valid concerns, but those concerns, we elected him to go to Senate and bring those concerns. We need him to actually table a motion challenging, the security of Kenyans within East Africa.
Okay.
He can't come to X and start threatening us about, our freedom of movement, yet the same government is giving us a passport that says this. And this is the same thing we'd say to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It doesn't bother you that the sovereignty of Kenya is being challenged by your neighbors? Why are we in a marriage that seems to not, take us seriously? So this is not a matter of just, activists and Gen Z protesters, or the people you think want to go to Tanzania to help protesting Gen Z. Some things that are being floated on TikTok, but it goes beyond that, even to a business community. To what extent will people then target your business because you're seen to be supporting a regime that is not working for human rights? The same energy that you've seen Kenyans coming to celebrate Kenya Airways. is, imagine if that was actually turned against it, because you are being perceived by the very citizens to be supporting, the opposite side of Kenyan safety. So I think everybody in Kenya should be worried, whether you're in business, whether you're a parent. What are we teaching, these young people who are children who are taking the exams? We teach them social ethics. What are we actually teaching them about what we reward and what we punish? Are we telling them, that they shouldn't care about what's happening in the country? Are we telling them that it's wrong to call out, governance issues when they see something is wrong? What's the point of it?
Okay. Interesting conversation. Let's talk about the solutions now, Nyamori. So what do we do from here now? Because we know 2 of our own are still missing. Government of Uganda says it doesn't have them. In fact, now they declare them missing persons. Kenya seems to be silent about it. What do we do now?
Yeah, you see, the challenge in this is that the application of habeas corpus was dismissed. And then the judge actually said that you cannot squeeze blood out of the stone.
Yeah.
And with that, basically what is said is that, the Ugandan authorities said they don't have the tool. I am hoping that information comes out. I am hoping that they are found. I'm hoping that they are brought home. I am hoping that we are able to improve human rights standards across the region. I am hoping that the region can be stable and safe for all of us to move so that we can trade. But then as we do this, as I said from the beginning, I'm a realist. And in the realism, it is important to ensure that we let Kenyans who travel across the region know of the challenges that they might face in those regions. And then we also need to, broadly discuss these instruments. We cannot cherry pick, certain specific parts of the instruments. For instance, I am a firm believer that we must promote the human rights, the rule of law, the democracy aspects of the East African Community Treaty. But then that treaty also talks about the issue of sovereignty. Yeah. It talks about the issue of respect of internal affairs of various countries. It is important that we have an open discussion to understand what this means, but we do not appear to overreach our rights into the other states to the extent where, as Kenyans, I remember even on social media sometimes I remember when we had a clash with our young people had a clash with the Tanzanian president, and they were telling her that we are Kenyans, we are different, we are not like your, because if we do not engage the rest of the countries in a way in which they would appreciate that we also respect their internal affairs. Yeah. Even as we call upon them and campaign and put pressure within the structures that are there, then the only default is for us as Kenyans to say that we are going to war to then make these countries compliant with our systems, which I don't think can work. Okay. We don't have the capacity. Yeah. Tanzania had to take their soldiers to Uganda to kick out Idi Amin. I don't think that we are ready for that, and that is what we are planning to do. I think we still have our internal affairs that we need to deal with, but we need to put our citizens to notice that it is not safe out there. Otherwise, we will be lying to them.
Okay. Irungu, what do we do now? We're in this situation.
So I think the statement by the judge in the habeas corpus was really significant in some ways. I mean, to call the Uganda Defense Forces a stone, and to use the analogy of blood, I think was a kind of a very strong statement. We laugh at it, but actually it's quite a poignant statement from a judiciary in terms of the executive, that the executive is a stone. But perhaps that's the reality that the judiciary has experienced in the context of Uganda. I think we have to keep focused. We have to keep focused on the role of the Kenyan government to use all diplomatic means, all means necessary to essentially determine determine whether, Nick and Bob are still alive, what state they're in, and to ensure that they come home to their families. I mean, it is just heartbreaking to listen to Bob's father, who ironically is a former Makerere student. And for him to talk about what it was like to be in Makerere back in when Makerere was Makerere, and for his son now to be disappeared in a place that he knows very well. So I think that's the first thing. The second one is that if the government is not able to secure the safety of Kenyans and cannot essentially represent citizens, then perhaps we should have a proper travel advisory from the government that says, do not travel to these countries, do not trade with these countries, do not interact with these countries, because they are neither safe for Kenyans to do so. And, I think that's what, European nations would do, that's what Americans would do. Why are we not having a public advisory if it is true that the government is helpless to protect people overseas? And the third one, I think, is really this issue around the importance of, ensuring that, that Kenyans feel a sense of safety in the region. I think, Joshua spoke about, the Tanzanian Defense Forces going into Uganda to remove Idi Amin. And it's often forgotten that it actually took 7 years for that intervention to take place. And by the time the Tanzanian Defense Forces removed Idi Amin, somewhere between 400 to 500,000 Ugandans had been butchered and literally slaughtered in a mass exercise of political state orgy that has left many African countries far behind in terms of just the violence. So I think we have to look carefully at this season of elections, and I think it's not just Uganda we must be worried about. Earlier this week, Amnesty released a report on Tanzania, and the report is called Unopposed, Unchecked, and Unjust. And we basically identified 4 areas in which, to be very candid, the electoral environment does not exist in Tanzania for a competitive democratic elections. The only presidential candidate is the incumbent, and it is very likely that she will be elected in circumstances that actually will not give her the legitimacy and the mandate that she was seeking. As we can remember, she actually has not been elected as a president before. This is the first time that she's going to the people of Tanzania to seek their vote, but she has essentially cracked down on journalists, human rights defenders, the opposition. Tundu Lissu's case has been extended just primarily to the other side of the elections to make sure that he cannot run. And you have a whole host of laws that have been introduced to essentially ensure that the freedom of expression, assembly, and association just do not prevail in this time. So I think it's really critical that we realize that we are, as a region, what we were most frightened of, which was post-election violence, has now been replaced by pre-election state violence. And that's also important for us as Kenyans, because in 2027, it will be our turn, and we will want to see that we do things differently from what we're seeing in Tanzania and next year in Uganda, perhaps.
All right. Nema, what do you recommend going forward as solutions?
Yes. As a solution, I think our governments should really look at the bottom of what is really ailing the region, right? Like we've just said, today it's Bob and Nicholas. Now, Kenyan journalists are not allowed to cover Tanzanian elections. So once you actually open that door, there's no telling how low we can go. So we have to have this in mind. The anxiety that has been seen in the region has come because of the power of Gen Z. There's no lying about that. But we need to know that this is a global issue, and countries with youthful populations that are relatively relatively well educated and unemployed have a 26% probability of getting into a civil conflict. And this probability moves from 26% to 150% when that demographic is actually is at a youth bulge, or what we call the peak of young people. What's the average age of young people? What's the population size of young people in Kenya today?
70%.
75%. So is there a peak that is, that is actually the definition of what a peak is, right? So when you have 75% of young people who feel disenfranchised, who are educated, who are exposed, whether you like it or not, you will not stop them from using AI. You'll not stop them from reading widely to see Nepal and, and compare notes with Moroccan young people or Madagascar. The answer is never going to be holding, abducting, disappearing a few people. You've got to actually get down into the bottom of what is ailing us. And I'll tell you what's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is to actually have that Tanzanian election with the majority of the population feeling like they did not participate. Look at where we are is a direct consequence of, around 15 million Kenyans refusing to participate in the elections in 2022. So whoever wins the election in 2027, it doesn't really matter if you do not actually have that. So looking at the millions in the streets protesting, and then looking at them failing to engage in the IBC process should worry all of us. Okay. Because if we get to the other side of 2027 with them still watching and observing, that's a problem. You're going to actually have civil unrest, and I really hate to be the prophet of doom. Okay, let me bring up the feedback here so that we close on this conversation and see what you're saying online at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Citizen Man Report. Orutua says the advances made in democracy in the East African region is at risk of being eroded by the same leaders meant to safeguard it by acting hostile on anybody who tries to question the abuse on the democracy the people must defend strongly. Okay? Gabi says the current Kenyan leaders have become numb to the pains of citizens fighting for accountability. Police brutality, abductions, and careless firing is no longer shocking. It's normalized. Behind every cruel and careless behavior is a loss of life. Okelo Mwalimu says human rights activists must change tact in their pursuit of respect for human rights. They should adopt more collaborative approaches when tackling state excesses. Being combative is counterproductive, as it may work against the interest of those in police custody. Okay. Gabi says the current, that is Mark, says our forefathers didn't fight for what we are experiencing in the East Africa community. Something needs to change. Okay. Daniel Kelvin says the UN's concern shows that Kenya's image globally is at stake. We need action, not statements. Okay. Lucy Otieno says, where do you draw the line between freedom of traveling and interference with the democratic processes of that nation? The question should be, do our neighbors respect us enough to not interfere with our issues? Why are we making their issues our business and complain when they rise up to protect themselves? Okay. Kirade says 2 Kenyan citizens, Bob Jagi and Nicholas Oyo, disappeared in Uganda over 3 weeks ago. Both governments have failed to give answers. Uganda cannot claim ignorance when people vanish within its borders, and Kenya cannot sit silent while our sons go missing abroad. Kiare Javan says our human rights activists happen to be very entitled. They need to understand that the sovereignty of a nation lies with the nation and the citizens of that nation. Those ideas of wanting a piece of our neighbors, what is it informed by? In whose interest are we exporting activism? Okay. Titus says listening to the lady in the broadcast is tantamount to comparing day and night. Our East African friends are very different from who we are. The history and the values that define us is a totally different script. Okay? All right, that's how we leave it for now. Thank you so much for making time. You had that QR code. What does that QR code, what does it do? So people send in their thoughts on where Bob Jagi, bring them back home.
Absolutely.
And
where does it go to? So it goes to a microsite that allows anybody who scans the QR code to email the Ugandan government to call for Nick and Bob to be released and brought home. So I just urge everybody, before you sleep tonight, please use this QR code and free Bob Jagi, free Nick Oyo.
So it goes straight to the Ugandan government?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for making time this evening. Thank you for speaking to us. Irungu Houghton, Executive Director, Amnesty International Kenya, Neema Mutemi, Positive Youth Development Expert, and Joshua Nyamori, Advocate of the High Court. And thank you all for the feedback that you sent through. That does it for us for now. On behalf of everyone who made this possible, say good night and God bless.
for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak, and many thanks. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. On my far right is Dr. Barak Muluka, Leadership and Communications Consultant. Good morning, Dr.
Morning, Ayub. How are you?
Lovely having you here on the broadcast.
Good to see you again.
And many thanks for the theory that we had developed here, and you wrote about it extensively yesterday on Sunday.
Nelson right here.
Council Harvey, good morning.
Good morning, Ayub.
A pleasure having you here on the broadcast.
Always.
Asante, the 49th President of the Law Society of Kenya. Kefa Ojijo joins us also this morning, an advocate of the High Court. Good morning, Kefa.
Morning.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
The Executive Director, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, is also with us here, Franklin Mukwanja. Good morning.
Good morning, Ayub.
Pleasure
for having me.
Having you here on the broadcast. A lot has happened while you were away, Franklin. There is now politics without the presence of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Today, the party is convening a very important meeting that will be chaired by his brother Oburu Oginga that will take, of course, many things into focus, including the future of the party that was left behind by the former Prime Minister, and also the exit which lays bare Kenya's political warriors and parasites, as yesterday extensively written by Dr. Barak Muluka. Let's begin in that regard, Dr. and coming to you first. This is ideally exposed, is it, a political class that rarely subscribes to ideology and policies?
Well, there's always ideology, regardless of what kind of guise it does take. Many years ago, President Daniel Arap Moi told us that he understood only one ideology, which he called the Tumbo ideology. And that Tumbo ideology continues to dominate the leadership space in this country. And if you talk about the parasitic situation that Nelson floated, and we have been developing it in other spaces, you are talking basically of Tumbo. It doesn't matter that it's the Tumbo of a little parasite that has got to find a host somewhere, and all these dynamics that we are witness to, including the ODM Central Committee meeting that's going to take place today, which has been dubbed by some as a crisis meeting, but which the Tumboists calling a routine meeting. It's about the self-same concerns, self-serving interests, where, you know, as the saying goes, that when the tide is low, we get to know who has been swimming naked. And so those who have been swimming naked, the moment of truth is here. They are looking for a leaf to cover the vital parts that must be covered, and therefore that they must remain on course doing that which they have always done. And for that matter, ideology is there, only that it's not an ideology that serves the public.
Okay. Franklin, before I come to you, and Nelson and also Kefa, let's listen in to the Principal Secretary at the Ministry of Education ahead of the examinations that are set to begin today, that will focus on millions of learners who will be transiting, and this is over 2 million of them who today will be sitting the Kenya Primary School Education Assessment and the Kenya Junior School Education Assessment ahead of transition to senior school. Here's what he's saying.
Properly. So I want to tell the nation that as a ministry, as a State Department, we have done our best to ensure that everything is ready. All the learners have been prepared. All the examinations have been prepared. They are ready, and this morning we are distributing them to different centers here in Kibra. I want to say that we call upon all our stakeholders, all our teachers, invigilators, to ensure that they administer these examinations professionally. We don't expect anything short of professional administration of 2025 KAJASEA, KAPSEA, and KCSE examinations. We are confident that the learners are prepared, and we have done everything that is required to ensure that all our learners get the best possible opportunity to do their examinations. I also want to confirm that we have released all the monies that are required to ensure that there's smooth examination administration. We gave out, the government provided all the money for all the candidates, and nobody should have any excuse whatsoever why they should not be facilitated to do these examinations. For Kajasea, it is historical. It is the first time in the history of this country that our learners are sitting for this exam, which will culminate into ensuring that we have a smooth transition from junior school to senior school. Our learners are prepared. We have enough spaces in senior school, grade 10. We have 2.4 million spaces against 1.1 million learners. So we have prepared everything. We have prepared a digital system to ensure that there's smooth transition. And I want to assure all our learners that they will get a space in senior school. But for today, we are very confident. We have asked all our sub-county directors, county directors to ensure that they administer and supervise these examinations with utmost professional conduct. I also want to confirm that we have sent capitation to all our schools around the country. So there is no excuse whatsoever why a school should complain or not have received the money, particularly those who have complied with the school data verification exercise. We have sent the money to all the schools. All the schools have confirmed they have received their money, and we are confident that they have all the materials and all the resources required to ensure that exams are conducted professionally. Thank you.
And that is Professor Julius Bitok speaking in Kibra here in Nairobi ahead of the rollout of the assessment for the millions of learners who will be starting the assessment today across the country, and all the very best from the Royal Media Services to the learners who will be transiting to senior secondary school. Back to you, Franklin. Dr. points out that those who have been swimming naked will be exposed given the nature of the political waters, given Odinga's departure from our political arena. But also going forward, largely it's not going to be a smooth ride, is it? There will be definitely turbulence politically across the arena.
Certainly. A big tree has fallen, and therefore the birds and their nests are scattering. And you would want to imagine in a moment that a party like ODM has, speaking of course from a very informed point of view, as I work with political parties, and ODM is one of my member parties, structurally you would say, you would assume they are strong, they have the rules, they have procedures on paper. But I do not think that those rules, structures, and procedures now matter. The instinct for survival has kicked in, and this instinct for survival goes beyond the party and the members of ODM. This survival involves the survival of the country's leader in President William Ruto.
Yeah.
That possibly his strategy was very much anchored on the partnership with Raila Odinga, and his absence demands that he begins to maneuver, and therefore he must defeat the structures, must defeat the procedures and the rules for him to be able to have a proper firm control of what is going to happen in ODM. And it's not just that. You can see that even the other political parties like KANU have to be quickly conscripted in to make sure that the survival instincts is actually obtaining. And this is the challenge that Barack is pointing at. We have political parties that sometimes I shudder to say, are they really political parties? Because they are something else other than ideological. And the state of our political parties should be clearly looked at acutely from the frame of the state of our economy, the state of our human rights, the state of our education, the state of our healthcare. You expect that political parties have actually very fundamental positions on these issues, that then they compete on the ideas to tackle these societal challenges. But the fact that we're struggling tells you clearly where the state of our political parties is. Yeah. I would classify them into three. The charismatic ones that are largely dominated by a very strong leader like Raila Odinga, with that strong ethnic backing, with ethnicity as the currency, of the political party, and of course with the advent of coalitions, enabling the various ethnic cabals to cut deals and strengthen each other. And then the catch-all, the ones that will pick on anything that is trending and becomes their real idea of how they would want to look at things and govern. And a majority of them are actually splinter groups, and they have not differed in terms of principle, but in terms of interests. It's not about the logic. It's not about the empathy or the ideals, but the interests that largely drive them. And these splinters have become so many because the intra-party systems are deliberately weak or deliberately weakened, as in the case of ODM, where the survival instincts kick in, and therefore all the issues that you have worked on, the structures that ODM has possibly worked on, and they have populated those structures most recently with their party internal party elections. But that all now does not seem to be something quite useful. All the procedures, all the rules will be thrown out of the window just to make sure that let us survive first and become sober later to discuss more significant issues.
Council Harvey, Franklin mentions the quest for survival, and here who survives on the other, because the president has already claimed a stake in the ODM party. And the ODM party, according to some members of the leadership, Simba Arati and co, are welcoming the president to vie on an ODM party ticket and come back to the party that he helped form in the aftermath of the referendum in 2005. So, seems a case of double political dilemma.
Well, your question is who survives? I think the survivor here is dependent on the fitness, survival for the fittest. It cannot be said that President William Samoei Ruto is any way advantaged than Elisha, than Wanga, than Khalwale. They are all struggling to survive. And much as he may appear slightly fitter than the rest of the other warriors and parasites, I think what we need to look at is the transient nature of these political formations right now. They are so temporary, they're worse than plastic paper wrapping, because they tend to shift every day. And I foresee a situation whereby William Samoei Ruto will run for president in 2027 on a coalition of ODM and KANU. That is most probable. Because of all the existing political parties, these two seem to be most elaborate in structural formation. And if he had a keen eye, his overtures towards ODM at the beginning of this year is indicators that he will come back to ODM and expel Edwin Sifuna and other belligerent owners of ODM was premeditated and deliberate. You can see the overtures he has made towards KANU to the extent of ensuring that the owner of KANU does not run for for office. Now compare this with the overtures of Daniel Arap Moi in 1992 and beyond. Moi tended to have permanent relationships, so that if he needed to reach out to individuals in Ford Asili or Ford Kenya, he will be deliberate. He will ask that they resign their positions in parliament and in those parties. He will accommodate them in Kano, deliberately come to Likuyani and campaign for Apili Wawire, walking all the way from Nangili Market up to Likuyani to ensure that he wins. Permanency. You understand? The person who suffers most from this transient nature of this formation that we are seeing is the people, because it requires a lot of public funds to undertake these transient enterprises, as opposed to the permanent overtures that were taken by President Daniel Arap Moi. So whoever is fit in this contest is the one that will survive. I foresee many people from Rift Valley running on a Kanu ticket. I foresee many people in Luo Nyanza and Western Kenya struggling to run on an ODM ticket after the fusion of ODM and UDM. But it will be a struggle for the fittest.
Okay. And Keva, you have been in the political rooms where these discussions have been happening. But first thing is first, how is then politics without the former Prime Minister and now all these events happening in so many ways affecting the political direction? For instance, the paper today writes that on page number 8, Ruto, Uhuru and Gideon will share stage, a high-profile one to be hosted in Nairobi that will deliberate on Africa's democratic future that brings many stakeholders from across the continent to Nairobi to talk about the continent's democratic future, and will also be attended by former Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo. Seems it's all now scattered across the political divide, and consolidating all this will be an uphill task.
Exactly. And Ayub, with Raila missing in the picture right now, we are going to see, going forward, we're going to see a lot of leaning towards the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta. We're going to see President Ruto leaning a lot towards the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta. You notice what really interested the masses when at the Nyayo Stadium. A lot of cheers, the applaud that Uhuru Kenyatta got when he was addressing the nation. This could mean two things, therefore. Number one, either it was what we call the social impeachment to the president right now. People telling him, you know what, we love the former president more than you. He did us good more than you're doing. So you need to amend your ways. And that definitely now start throwing him to start forming this, tight relationship, association with the former president. Number two, it could mean what one of the psychologists, Lotto Masi, says, that human beings have what we call the emotional power. And this emotional power cannot be sustained. It has to be transformed. And he studied the human mind and also the couple's relations, and realized that where a loved one, when a person loses a loved one, the emotional energy cannot be bestowed in them. It has to be transformed. And normally it's transformed to somebody who was closer or a friend to the deceased. And we could see this probably from the love that people had for Baba, for Raila. We could see that the way we saw Uhuru had stood with him, the way we saw Uhuru has been his best friend, the president who fronted him to become the next president, people felt that this love could now be channeled to Uhuru Kenyatta. And Ruto will therefore definitely look for an advantage to attach himself to that love. Over the past 1 week, Ruto has been enjoying what we call a toddler ice cream effect. You see, many ice cream vendors in Europe towards the end of the year 2000 and 2002, decided to change the tactic on how they would sell ice cream. They moved from the subways and the markets and went targeted clearly where the children institutions are, the schools, the kindergartens and stuff like that. The idea was not that because children were their best clientele, but they knew that if one child could throw tantrums and manipulate the parent to buy ice cream, then the other parents will definitely find themselves just buying ice cream for their kids without them asking. And that is what we have started seeing in the ODM. We have started seeing the effect of some MPs now starting saying we've shifted our allegiance to the president now. We want the president to come back. Even other people, Ruto expect that to happen, even to other MPs that have not officially even declared him to be part of the ODM. And so he's been riding on this, and now he's going to look for a way in which how he can capture ODM. I don't think he's going to come back to ODM, but he's going to have influence in ODM. And he can only do that also when he sets now the close relationship with the former President Uhuru Kenyatta. So we are going to see a lot of entanglement between Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM and UDA in between going forward.
Yeah. Daktari, when you listen to Governor Simba Arati calling on the president to rejoin the party, is it an admission, and this is a feeling shared by other ODM party members, is it an admission that the center has lost a stable factor in Odinga and therefore they need the presence of the president there, and perhaps to use the symbolic presidential power to contain the forces that seem to be pushing the party from within?
I'm rather doubtful that that could be the scenario. Simba Arati has belonged so far to the strand of ODM that has been hostile to the so-called broad-based government. I must interrogate myself and ask whether he speaks out of genuine persuasion that that's the way to go, or whether he speaks with tongue in cheek. And I would suppose that it is the latter, on account of the fact that Ruto has been talking about not allowing ODM to go to the opposition, is behaving as if he's in charge. He has even told Sifuna that I'm a founder member and we could expel you, among other things that he's saying. And so, speaking tongue-in-cheek, Simba Arati, who has been solidly against the broad-based government, would be telling him, if you find ODM so alluring, why don't you just cross over and forget about UDA, then you could run on the ODM ticket. I see that there are going to be very many things. Let me say there are likely to be very many things happening within ODM, including fallout. I do not see that the warriors, as we have called them, are going to cave in. They probably will be quite ready to migrate to other spaces. They will not migrate voluntarily. They will wait for somebody to attempt to expel them from the party. And I can assure you, and Franklin is here, that it's easier said than done, this thing of expelling people from parties. I was Secretary General of the defunct ANC, and we had our own rebels, people who would not toe the party line, and we attempted many times to expel them, and it was an uphill task. And ODM itself previously attempted to expel people. It was virtually impossible. I think Jubilee almost succeeded. But we are also closing in to the elections. So these people are going to stay put, drag them through the political parties' disputes tribunal, drag them through the High Court, through the Court of Appeal. And indeed, these things can go all the way to the Supreme Court, by which time the elections are here. And they're going to be mining the controversy and the litigation for political mileage. I think President William Ruto has his goose cooked. And what we are seeing is an individual who could drown clingingly clutching on straws.
Okay.
And in the end, we are going to likely move from the parasitic space to the saprophytic space. You know, they are also saprophytes, the ones that are the pests that thrive on dead matter.
Okay. So when we get back from the break, Franklin and Kefa and Nelson will explore this more and the battle for the soul of the nation around the needs of the people, as Raila Odinga has always fashioned the party, but now his absence kicking off a storm within the party ahead of today's very crucial meeting and the laying of the claim that including the president has laid on the party. And also what happens to also Nelson, to Maraga and company who are also hovering around the political environment, plus what this also portends for President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Jubilee Party, who has also wrestled back the party after an attempted takeover after the elections of 2022. Stay tuned after the break on the broadcast. Thanks for staying with us. This is Daybreak. In studio with me, Franklin Mukwanja, the Executive Director, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, advocates of the High Court, Keva Ojijo, and Nelson Havi, formerly the 49th President of the Law Society of Kenya, and Dr. Barak Muluka, Leadership and Communications Consultant. Yes, Franklin, your hand was up. Ideally, a lot is going to happen, is it, in reshaping the country's political establishment?
Clearly, and several things are likely to obtain. One of the things that I want to proffer this morning is that the split of ODM is inevitable. And I dare say, to me, having interacted with the party and its leadership, I would almost say that it was premeditated and acutely planned by the former party leader, may he so rest in peace, Raila Odinga. And if you look at the choices of the leaders that went to the government, were carefully, in my view, picked by Raila Odinga to enable and arise a situation in the party where there was going to be succession. The choice of Oparanya, the choice of Joho, the choice of Badi, the choice of Wandai. In my view, and my own political instincts, is that the party leader was signaling that there is some dead wood I need to chop off. And they seemingly have come out as the readily power-hungry people who are willing to compromise sufficiently to join any arrangement. And Raila Odinga has been on record severally. It may be difficult sometimes to trust the political leaders who, as Barak says, speak tongue in cheek. But he seemed to struggle with the acceptance that ODM was formally in a working arrangement with UDA. And to me, that seemed that he had two competing groups and interests, one which was ready and keen to get power without principle, and he offloaded that to the executive. And in my view, he could have hoped that the younger, fresh, radical, the Sifunas and the others, would then automatically find sufficient room for wiggle in the party and take charge. Now, that hour of reckoning has come. Who has the significant influence within the membership? Because we know Raila Odinga's modus operandi, that if he didn't like you, he wouldn't waste time. I mean, there is the issue of of the former Secretary General,
Ababu
Namwamba, and how he dealt with him in the National Elections Conference. There is the issue of the former Executive Director who was just picked in Raila's, circle and kicked out of the party. And therefore, Raila Odinga, respectfully, had a way of disciplining and using his very loyal forces to instill discipline where you completely had, your own disagreements and you couldn't connect. But interestingly, Sifuna has maintained his respect and support quietly from Raila Odinga until his demise. And occasionally he would actually defend him and say, he's speaking the party position, and you may not like it, but he's the spokesperson of the party.
Yeah.
The hour of reckoning is here. Will the young Turks in ODM that, in my view, were given room by sending off the others to the executive, manage to hold their own in the absence of Raila Odinga? It is up to them to convince the party leadership. Raila Odinga was not one to give and hand over. He was actually one to take from. So they have to find a way of convincing. Okay. And I think they have an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because the nature of politics that William Ruto does and Raila Odinga's politics is that one has had these loyal fanatics without oiling their palms. The other one is very heavily reliant on subduing opponents by oiling their palms. And the styles that Raila Odinga and William Ruto and how they differ and how the ODM fanatics and loyalists are handled is a matter of time before we begin seeing disgruntlement and voices that we are not happy. Okay. And how these younger people that have been disgruntled and have had the audacity to say that we are not happy with the idea. In fact, the Secretary General is on record saying, I would read any other resolution other than the resolution of declaring support for President Ruto. It is up to them now. There is no young people joke that after age 30, you do not come from a poor background. Yeah. You are the background. Yes, so that hour has come. Will they take over, or will they be annihilated by William Ruto, the ex who seems to be saying, my former girlfriend looks quite beautiful nowadays?
And the attempts of crawling back to enjoy the love again. Council Harvey, gifting the party for some is an option within the ODM party, and there are some who want a continuity in the shoes of the former Prime Minister, the Social Democrat he was. And does this give us an idea then that this was perhaps the last attempt for socialism? Komchesi also writes in his op-ed today that Paul Ogula's book, The Struggle for Socialism in Kenya, reminds us that the KPU was the last serious attempt to define Kenya's soul around the needs of its people, which Raila Odinga also believed in. But the party, after his death, seems not to be structured around that very same cause, given what they have said during his funeral in Bondo.
Well, rightfully so, because of the temporary nature of political parties as they have become to be. But what we must not forget, that ODM has been in existence permanently from 2005. Other than KANU, which has, for all practical purposes, disintegrated, ODM is still the most formidable party. It has the aspirations of socialism. And it is my projection that the remainder of Edwin Sifuna as a youthful leader in ODM, despite persistent efforts by people to kick him out, even during the life of Raila Amolo Odinga, is an indicator that Raila Amolo Odinga saw himself in Edwin Sifuna. And Edwin Sifuna is my very good friend. I have some advice for him. Accession to high office does not require hesitation. It doesn't require hesitation. When the king is killed, even in combat or in illness, the heir apparent must prepare for coronation quickly. In fact, in Luhya tradition, it used to be done before the chief is buried. So yes, mourn Raila Amolo Odinga, but you must not hesitate in taking over the leadership of ODM. In fact, by right now, they ought to have conglomerated at Chungwa House and taken over the leadership of this party. Otherwise, the leadership of the party will continue disintegrating, it will continue the division, it will continue the fragmentation, it will end up being a party domiciled in Siaya alone. It will end up being a party domiciled in Kisumu, Homa Bay, and Migori. And I do not think that is what Raila Amolo Odinga decided. And it's perhaps for that reason, borrowing from him, he jettisoned this dead wood with the expectation that those who look like him when he was youthful will take over the party at the proper time and proceed. Sifuna, please stop the mourning. You need to take over power right now.
Yes, Kefa. Interesting. Now, I don't think Sifuna will manage to take over power at ODM. Number one, it's true we are going to have slight split in the ODM. But here is the catch. It is not going to be of magnitude, or the effect is not going to be felt in the next general election. This is the reason. We are going to have a slight split, but the majority are going to remain in the coalition with UDA. Now, the few people who are going to move out are going to be in a dilemma, whether to join the Gachagua team, which they do not truly trust, or to go it alone, which still is inconsequential on their own. So the effect, therefore, is not going to be felt in this election. Maybe after the next general election, when now they start forming base and looking for new alliances and building up the new party, there may be something significant. But for now, I don't think so. And I don't think Edwin Sifuna henceforth is going to have a commanding voice or a persuading voice in ODM. I don't think he commands the majority position in the party. And now, in the absence of Raila, it is going to be a direct cold war on him. They may not succeed, as Dr. said, in expelling him, but he'll find it so uncomfortable that he cannot stay there himself. So he'll opt to move out. But the question is, where is he going? Which camp is he joining? Because I can also see, I can tell clearly that we cannot even expect Kalonzo also to constantly remain in the opposition as it is right now. With Ruto now owing the former president Uhuru Kenyatta, we know the influence that Uhuru Kenyatta has in Kalonzo's position. And most likely we are going to see also the opposition now splitting again and real alliances forming back to UDA and ODM party. The challenge for ODM will only be one. They may choose to be a useless party, or they may choose to be a strong party to negotiate. And this is the problem I had with when I started hearing, those clamations from some ODM members saying, we've already declared our support to President Ruto, we've already decided he's going to be our president. That is not how you negotiate in a political table. They ought to put their house intact first, command respect, command authority, bring their members together, ensure they have that unity, then they can have the power to negotiate in a position. Because I foresee a coalition not just for the parties, but I see where we are going to have the presidency coming from both the UDA and ODM. And this is what likely Ruto is going to do. Because looking at the political landscape, how it has happened, we do not expect William Ruto to have a running mate from the mountain in 2027. That will be a tall order. That is the truth. As things are going and formations are happening. But what is he going to ride again now? The idea of the youth and the hustler did not work. This time round, he may now go with the idea of women. Okay. And we see where we're now going to have the presidency as the president coming from UDA being the President Ruto, and we're going to have a running mate from ODM and a female candidate. And who is likely to be that position? None other than Gladys Wanga. So we're already seeing a formation of two different people who are in command of their own parties at this position. And that is why it is now clear for ODM that they have to put their house in order to have that bargaining power before they have the next move to the next general election.
So how will then the party look like without the strong voice and the spokesmanship or spokespersonship of Edwin Sifuna, who has been consistent throughout, even in critiquing the broad-based arrangement when Raila was alive?
You see, let me tell you, I think the ODM has probably one of the party with the best brains. If you look, everybody is equal to the task, you see. Edwin Sifuna has been advancing what he believes in. Raila was a Democrat in nature, and he will not want to definitely punish somebody for speaking their mind while advancing the party interest. But the people who have remained in the party now are people who are just personal interest oriented. They will not listen to Edwin Sifuna. And I don't think Edwin Sifuna's voices is going to have any more meaning in the party going forward. But when he falls off from the party, I do not see him surviving on his own. He will need to probably find somewhere to lean on. But I also do not see him feeling safe with the Gachagua camp. So where is he going to survive in? I'm seeing Edwin Sifuna surviving, just remaining in the ODM, becoming so, maybe less active in the ODM, just surviving to ensure probably he survive the next election. And after the next election, I do not see Edwin Sifuna surviving in ODM. Okay. Probably there will be a new camp forming their own party.
Yes, Dr.
Yes, sir. I'm actually intrigued by the council's definition of the political space in absolute binary positions, that it's either this or that. And also the attempt to equate party honchos to the party. There's the high presidium of the political party. And then there's the mass following within the political party formation. If you go to Malava today, ODM is conspicuously absent. If you go to Huisero, where I come from, ODM was peddling the ticket around, touting it around. It went begging, looking for anybody who could run on that ticket in Kisa East, where there is a by-election. And so ODM is missing in what have been its strongholds. It's a party that got onto the limp way before its kingpin, Raila Odinga, his soul rest in eternal peace, passed on. It was already in a troubled space. When they went to Kakamega, the last function that the departed Raila Odinga attended in Western, the objective was to smoke Edwin Sifuna out of the party, out of leadership. And Francis Atwoli captured the spirit of the moment, that we came here thinking that you are going to dress down this young man. And we can see that he has got a following. We've got to draw a very clear distinction between the wishful thinking of party honchos, people who occupy those elevated spaces within the party, and the population out there. We are not in an environment in which people are just going to be told that you are going to vote for so-and-so, that you are going to support Ruto. That has been the thorn in the flesh of the voter who is now more self-assertive, more conscious of his or her rights, and who will reject certain things. So the thinking that because certain powerful fellows within the high presidium of the party have taken a certain position, therefore this is the way it's going to work, it's not very likely to be that. And as I said at the outset, this notion of you are either with Rigathi Gachagua or you are with William Ruto. No, the dynamism within the political space prepare the country for other options. And we must remain conscious and open to the possibility that there are going to be other options, other formations, And Ayub, when Jesus Christ is on the cross, you don't ask him whether he's going to join the criminal on his left or the criminal on his right. One of the two is going to have to say, remember me when you come to paradise. And he has to say, verily I say unto you, you will be with me in paradise. So we have to look at the people who are being persecuted now within those symbolic prisms.
Okay, and before I come to you, Council Harvey, Franklin, this tells us, since multipartyism in the aftermath of repealing Section A, the struggle in loosening the grip of personalities around our politics is it, rather than the ideologies and policies that ought to be pushing forward our political parties, and therefore explains this problem that we are encountering now in the absence of the former Prime Minister.
We can look at that from two lenses. One is that are we overly being too hard on ourselves? That we're expecting the maturity of a multi-party democratic culture of 100 years from, 30 or so years. A part of me believes so. Are we facing in the right direction? Yes. The speed may not be the desired one. And we need to begin looking at the reasons why we have been slower at maturing. And this is aptly captured in George Orwell's quote, that voters that vote in criminals, corrupt leaders, and all the bad manners that are associated with many of the elected leaders that we have are no victims, but accomplices. Our political fabric and our political party culture, our democratic culture, is problematic. And unless we invest deeper into civic engagement, political education, we are unlikely to shift this attitude, where we do not want to look and evaluate our leaders from their core functions of oversight, legislation, representation, but how good they are at social welfare dispensation. As if, the qualification of a good Kenyan leader, and like most of African, should be wealthy and generous, regardless of the source of wealth. And those issues are key. During the break time, Elder Barak mentioned that these fundamentals of money, of ethnicity, are challenges that we must deal with. And that can only be dealt, in my view, from a clear political education program. Having said that, let me quickly, because I was also astounded by Ogijo's reflections, and I think he's operating very ideally. And I'll give him quite some scenario. The demise of Raila Odinga is going to expose the soft underbelly of those who have been surviving on indoctrinating the electorate with the crying and rallying call of we want to help Raila up here. And we cannot, and I speak with this with a lot of respect for women leadership, and I would really be happy that a woman finally ascends to the position of deputy president as such. But I see Gladys Wanga as one of those with a soft underbelly that is exposed in the absence of Raila Odinga. Gladys Wanga came in through a negotiated agreement, a negotiated democracy. She didn't face the electorate, the party primaries. Gladys Wanga needs to face the party loyalists, the grassroots delegates at an ODM National Delegates Conference, be elected the chairperson, not handpicked, in the party organs where it is most of, the tomatoes that are grown in what is it called? or a zero-grassed cow, very conditioned boardrooms and such things. So we've not seen the Gladys Wanga that can actually do the proper grassroots delegates. So she's pseudo. Her support is pseudo. Her political networks are pseudo. She has not been exposed to the acute conditions of building her own following. And that is where I should begin. That is point one. Point two is that Ogijo is speaking as if other actors are just going to sit back. What tells you that even Oburu is not interested in being William Ruto's running mate? You have these two other leaders, the Minister for the CS for National Treasury, Badi, and they had very good reviews from the President during Raila Odinga's burial. And you also have the entitlement of Opio and I. I think when now the opportunities are presented, you're not going to see that they're just going to sit back, that merely because you are a woman and the optics are there. No, it's not going to happen. As coming from an ugali eating nation, my grandmother, my grandmother told me one day, because you sharing this thing, and this mountain is put there, and the focus, as my brothers Harvey and Barack will tell you, should not be the vegetables on your plate. That is yours. The focus should be on the mountain of ugali.
Yes.
And you terrorize it. Terrorize that first. Then you can, treat the vegetables as a dessert later on.
Yes.
And that was very serious education for me. Because all the time she would have to summon me on the side, for some, because you didn't go for and until I learned that. So Gladys Wanga should not just look at the vegetables she has on her table in Homa Bay, which was actually served to her. And she didn't go for, she has not yet, started digging in.
Yes, Councillor.
I tend to listen to what many do not hear. I've listened to Ogijo. Unfortunately, Ogijo speaks for the majority of the Luos of his age, the enlightened Luo. And what do they say? They are uncomfortable with Edwin Sifuna at the helm of ODM. And because I've close proximity to the people of his age, I think that is the resonating message across the board. And it's not limited to this age group. In fact, if you elevate that argument slightly up and interrogate the views within ODM, you'll realize it is the youthful elected leaders in ODM from Luo Nyanza who have expressed discomfort with Edwin Sifuna. I mean, Gladys Wanga has said it so clearly. Millie Odhiambo has said it so clearly. The only hesitation appears to be from the most mature of the lot, James Orengo and Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, because they've been there. They know it. Sifuna finds himself in a situation that Michael Kijana Wamalwa found himself many years before.
In the aftermath of Jaramogi's departure.
The only difference is Sifuna does not have a Raila Odinga as a contest against him from Luo Nyanza, as it was in 1994 upon the death of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And we cannot lose sight of one fact. Raila Amolo Odinga wanted ODM to be a national party. There are those parasites within his conclave who are determined to make this an ethnic party. We don't have any grievances with him. We can only advise those warriors who are proactive. Edwin Sifuna, you find yourself in the same position that Nikita Khrushchev found himself in after the death of Joseph Stalin. You're a good student of history, you're a good student of law, you're a good student of politics. This is the moment. And my assurance to Edwin Sifuna is that there's a great appeal outside Luo Nyanza. And that appeal is what Raila Amolo Odinga stood for. And this must be done because we saw the deliberate effort by William Samoei Ruto to emasculate Jubilee a few months after the election. Were it not for the determination by President Uhuru Kenyatta to wrestle the party back to him, Jubilee would have been taken. We've seen deliberate attempts to take ODM. KANU has been taken. You know, any person at the helm of the executive will want absolute power. Make no mistake about it. Even me, even Barack here. Make him president, he'll want executive absolute power. That's why we have checks and balances. Because a question may be asked, why do we have the political parties act in the first place? Why are we allocating public funds to political parties if through caprice and determination, all political parties are being phased out with the deliberate intention of having one person, one party, despite the fact that we claim to have a multi-party democracy. That is the perspective from which, despite the want of hearing amongst many, I've listened and have no grudge from what I've listened. What I can only do is to project and give a perspective upon which this scenario can be bettered.
Okay, and let's explore this, gentlemen, starting with you, Kefa, that for the former Prime Minister, the late Raila Odinga, he was more dependent on the support from the people. Actually, he was a creation of the people after creating himself. Who today bears those political traits and the DNA, in your view, Kefa, as we speak about transition and the challenges first? Second, Council pointed out that political parties ought to be maintained for the advancement of our democracy, and Senior Counsel James Orengo also said that when he spoke during the funeral of the former Prime Minister, said, let's stop killing political parties. I'm sure that message had a specific target. It was the president.
Exactly.
In the aftermath of what Harvey had pointed out.
Exactly.
So how do we extrapolate these 2 points?
Number one, Ayub, I'm a very practical guy when I'm discussing politics of this country. I do not like us to go around and imagine this scenario. We can tell. We have been in this country. We have studied the political formation and the changes that happens in political space. We can tell what is going to happen. I'm a very practical guy, and I say it as it's going to happen. And you will come here after 2027 election, and you will see exactly what I've told you. You see? So
everything is recorded, so we will...
Yes, we will come here after 2027, and you will see exactly what I've told you.
Okay, yes, please, go ahead.
Ayub, there cannot be another Raila Odinga. That was an exceptional man with his own unique creatures, an enigma on his own. There cannot be another Raila Odinga, and I cannot equate anybody to be as another Raila Odinga. But remember, also nature bores a vacuum. We have seen this, even if you study the history of politics, right, from the independence, how things happen when even somebody, a community that used to command some political space, felt, for instance, when Tomboy had left the space, we felt that there was a little bit of jiggers in between. Jaramogi came in, took over. When Wamalwa Kijana was now struggling, Raila came in. You see, so there's always somebody that takes advantage and starts rising at that position. Now, let me just answer my brother here on what he said. He said Gladys Wanga has never done anything. She was just handpicked and put in place. It's very unfortunate. Perhaps I will say with authority right now that the most influential, hardworking person in ODM I know right now is none other than Gladys Wanga. I can tell you with authority. I also happen to come from Homa Bay County. This is a woman who came from nowhere, with no political history, nothing. Vied and became the woman for 2 terms. When she went for the gubernatorial seat, of course it was negotiated because there were so many people with interest. And they all agreed who is best among us. And she turned out to be the best among the equals that they have.
I interviewed Evans Kidero in the aftermath of the settlement by the party leadership. And he was disgruntled, as the others were, because of the intervention of the party, and he said he never felt fairly treated.
No, she beat Kidero hands down. That is the truth.
But there was no nomination to that effect, is it?
But Kidero went on an independent, vied on an independent ticket.
Given the ODM dominance, when I spoke to him, I remember very well, he was very specific about why the party did not allow fair nomination process for the person who has the support of the people to be accorded the party ticket.
The party constitution allows so many ways in which people can, be given position, through consensus, through nominations, and where they see it fit to have consensus, that's what they do. It's not only in Homa Bay, it's been done in so many other constituencies, you see. So that
Even that the ODM party espouses and embodies the name democracy, and would it have been fair if the nominations were conducted, in your view?
But do you know, Ayub, he even said here that Gladys was handpicked and made the chair of ODM. How was Edwin Sifuna made the Secretary General of ODM?
He probably
For instance.
But
Doctor, let me just finish. So that, because I know probably this is a bit uncomfortable to the people who...
No.
Okay, let's hear from then you proceed. Yes, Dr. Your hand was up.
We are not uncomfortable. Yeah. We are made of sterner stuff than Kefa wants to imagine. But you see, one is allowed, and we must allow Kefa to wish and to express his wishful thoughts. If you go to Homa Bay, I speak not as a resident of Homa Bay, and therefore completely unemotional, unlike my younger brother, Kefa here.
I'm not emotional, I'm just practical.
The person whom the people of Homa Bay wanted was Magwanga.
Oyugi Magwanga.
Oyugi Magwanga, who ended up being forced to become a running mate. Evans Kidero wanted to take it to the primary, Oyugi wanted to take it to the primary. Gladys Wanga did not want to take it to the primary. And I think what Franklin Gwanje is saying is in fact being authenticated by Kefa when he says that Gladys came from nowhere. Now these were the parasitic politicians whom Raila Odinga handpicked. And I'm surprised that, and with a lot of respect and reverence to the late Raila Odinga, that Kefa wants to believe that there was democracy within ODM. There wasn't. It was a one-man rule. That if he said this, and Gladys Wanga would tell you that if Baba says left, we go left. If he says right, we go right. If you do not understand, refer to number one. So she was handpicked and put in that place. The taste of that pudding is now here, that she has got to fight for that space, to climb through that mountain of ugali on her own fuel and get there. And as he also correctly says, Franklin, that there are other interests within that same zone.
Okay.
And there will be a night of long knives within that ODM space. And if they are not careful to finally agree with the Nelson Harvey, you're going to end up with a provincial political party in which even the populations on the ground lose faith.
Okay.
You know,
please finish.
What disturbs me is that I think we have fixed our minds to clearly bring out Edwin Sifuna or specific people as the hope of ODM, as the people who are going to be the big change or champion. That is not true. We cannot be here saying that there was no democracy in ODM. If Raila says left is left, because it's about Gladys Wanga. And here, Raila says we are in broad-based government, we have a 10-point agenda. We are working something with this. And Sifuna comes and says, I'm not part of that. I do not want to be associated with that. And he's still in ODM. And Raila does not find that to be some. So what type of democracy do we want to talk about if that is not democracy? If that is not democracy, if seeing Edwin Sifuna disagreeing with Raila's position in the party and still remain the Secretary General, it's not democracy. Let us not forget, the most powerful Secretary General ODM has ever had in its history was none other than Ababu Namwamba, the man who swore himself with the name of Raila Odinga in Parliament. And Ababu felt that now he has the numbers. People listen to him. You know, he's a man of the people. And he thought he could do it on his own. When he left the party, what happened to Ababu Namwamba? You see, people like Edwin Sifuna are relevant only when they're fighting within the party. They remain so relevant and they remain the darling of the people when they're fighting within the party. But when they walk outside the party that people associate themselves with, Nelson Harvey here said that ODM probably is one of the strongest political parties going by the duration it has been in existence. You see, when they walk out of that political party outside on their own, how much can they pull? What type of crowd can they pull? You see, and this is the position we are saying. I am saying a very clear, practical things in the political arena. ODM is going to put the house in order. It is not by coincidence that Gladys Wanga was made a chair of the ODM. I mean, anybody could have been made a chair of ODM. Anybody. It is not by coincidence she was made the chair of ODM. And once they put the house in order, and they decide that this is the way they want to go, and I told there might be slight, disagreements with him, but they're going to be inconsequential in the next general election. And ODM is going to decide who is going to carry their flag in coalition with other government. And that is why I'm telling you, I do not see anybody other than Gladys Wanga leading that formation.
I get your point, but they're also somewhere inviting the president to be the flag bearer.
He can't come back to ODM. He can't come back to ODM.
But there are some who want.
The president cannot come back to ODM.
Okay,
he will not. His pride to leave his political party to go back to ODM will not be proper. But he's going to form an alliance with ODM. That is.
But there are some who want him to be part of the ODM party.
Yes, but I know he cannot go back.
So that therefore it kicks off your political attitude. Yes, Councillor.
I need to speak with profound circumspection in reference to Ogijo because these are my in-laws. They retain the power to recall my wives. So I have to be extremely careful. But that notwithstanding, I owe a greater duty to the nation and the people of Luo Nyanza. As I've said, we are not dismissing what Ogijo is saying. He speaks for a majority of the population of his age and a population slightly above his age. But the question that we must grapple with right now is where do we want to take the democratic space in Kenya post the death of Raila Odinga. That discourse can only be fruitful if it is undertaken objectively. We are in a multi-party democracy. The cannibalization of political parties is an enterprise that must not be countenanced. And if you in Luo Nyanza need any direction as to what is right, you must verily listen to two people and two people alone. James Orengo and Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. These two gentlemen have the benefit of age. They fought for what we have in their youth. They sacrificed a lot. We cannot allow short-term benefits of self-actualization without hard work to blur the wider goal that Raila Odinga had for the people of Kenya, not Luo Nyanza. You understand? So I believe there is part of this population that is affiliated to the views of Ogijo, but is still amenable to a broader perspective, one that will ensure we have a functional executive and independent and vocal parliament that is able to push the agenda of the people of Kenya. Otherwise, we will fall. And we cannot fall just because the king has fallen. He has left us with a roadmap.
Franklin.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to go on record that I am here to profile and profile this leader against the other. My point clearly, Ogijo, was the absence of Raila Odinga provides an equal opportunity to Edwin Sifuna, to Gladys Wanga, to Simba Arati, Babu Wino, and the rest within the ODM fraternity to prove their mettle. They have been in a conditioned room that was well architectured by one Raila Odinga, and it is now time that they are properly exposed to the direct race of politics. So that gives them an opportunity to emerge. And that must be quite clear. As to whether some of them will survive and the others not, it is quite clear. The political landscape is not for favors. Gladys Wanga has to go for it, just the way Sifuna would go for it. Some will be subdued. The others will find their own pathways. If you look at the two, as it were, Edwin Sifuna arrived at the party secretariat and declared, I think sometime in 15, 16.
Before the elections in 2017.
Yes, that the office of the Secretary General is vacant, and I am here, to take charge. We know Raila Odinga's modus operandi, that when you differed, he found a way of having his co-loyalists deal with you democratically, right? and we have not seen some of those things subjected. The survival of ODM, and if there is something that I would advise them as the Executive Director of Center for Multiparty Democracy, as our member political party, is that let the Central Committee today announce when we're going to have a National Delegates Conference, because the party is done with the grassroots elections. And I am aware and privy to that. If there is a gift that Baba Raila Odinga left with them, is reorganizing the party grassroots. Let them convene the National Delegates Conference. Let Edwin Sifuna go for the post of Secretary General, retain it, and we will have proven his worth. Let Gladys Wanga go for the party chair or the party leader and get it, so that then we can begin to say we're separating wheat from the chaff. Otherwise, all this are mere opinions, and as it were, opinions are like armpits. Some armpits stink, others do not. So allow us to profile on opinions, whether stinking or not.
The Euroforce.
Dr. coming to you, this also exposes the extent to which political parties also struggle for survival, given their short political shelf life, what's happening within the Jubilee Party. And also, Kanu, as Councillor Harvey has pointed out, plus the contest in this regard that everything revolves around the personality. Is this a grave consequence we are looking into heading into a consequential election in 2020?
That's the point precisely, that we have not yet evolved and grown the political party culture. Because the political party cannot be a group of people up there, honchos in the party presidium, who say left and everybody goes left, who say right and everybody goes right. Because the political party is essentially a mass movement. And the mass is out there. It's not been consulted. What we have are shopping baskets, election shopping baskets, that at the end of the season we go out there with our shopping basket and we're able to pick up whatever we are able to. And after that, it goes into dormance. And it's built around an individual. People ask you, whose party is this? When we formed the Democratic National Alliance, we started hearing people saying, oh, this is Musalia Mudavadi's party, which it is not. You hear, this is Uhuru Kenyatta's party, this is William Ruto's party. And when William Ruto migrates from a certain location to another one, that location that he migrates to becomes a party with a new name. And there's a following that then doesn't seem to even bother to interrogate what this particular outfit stands for. So Raila Odinga was the party, he was the ideology, he was the rallying call, he was the entire entities within the bigger edifice. And the moment of truth is eventually here, as Franklin of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy says, this is the time to go back to the delegates across the country. And you are likely to survive that way.
And where does this political wave, Nelson, have a place, Maraga and company?
Well, ideally, you're asking where it places myself and my presidential
and also
candidate. We have, in the recent past, been traversing the entire country. The Chief Justice, David Kanani Maraga, has been campaigning for our candidates in the by-elections. And over and above that, he has come out to speak on key important issues of national importance. He's spoken about the Cyber Crimes Amendment Act. He's spoken about the misuse of public funds. No other potential candidate for president has been so formidable and impactful in the recent past on issues that are germane to the people of Kenya. He has also been out there rallying support and making clarion calls to the 6.2 eligible new voters to come out and register. No other potential candidate for president has been doing this. And we are comfortable with that situation because we realize, and this is the truth, that the contest for the known candidates, the ones who have been in this arena for a considerable period of time, is to fight over the available voter basket. They do not want that voter basket increased. And herein is the intro for the 6.2. If you want any change at the helm of leadership of this country and all other levels, then it's incumbent upon you to heed the call by David Kinani Maraga. You need change in government. You need a reset. You need people in office who abhor corruption, individuals who are capable to account for what they have, individuals who have integrity, individuals who will not hide behind legislation and come and tell you, look, this amendment is intended to preserve morals, these amendments are intended to preserve families, yet in actual fact, they want to curtail and suppress the freedom of expression. I believe in due course, David Kinani Maraga will also come out and speak about Job, Jagi, and Nicholas Oyo, who have been kidnapped and are being detained in Uganda. You know, we cannot have a president, we cannot have a candidate for president who doesn't speak to what is important to the people of Kenya. And I think with that background, Ayub, I sit from a point of assurance that there are many of us in Kenya who still see the propriety of an accountable government. And I'm proudly associated with David Kinani Maraga as one of those few who we can bank upon.
Okay, let's sample the feedback, and I'll give the final word to Council Kefa and to you, Franklin. The hashtag on X is Citizen Day Break. The SMS code is 22422. at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. The first is from Engineer Lazaro, who says, Mr. Muluka, we must touch the coin from both sides. The absence of Raila in the political arena will severely affect both ruling regime and the opposition. People like Sifuna already jostling for position and power. These are symptoms of the heat. Jay Musoma says Raila's death left many leaders who had a parasitic relationship with the ODM gullible, and Ruto is now setting them up for a forced political marriage through a predetermined Baba succession. Must the party leader be his family member or from Nyanza? This is a question he poses. Franklin Lorinda says, most political parties today barely last beyond one election cycle, built on hype, broken by ego. Raila Odinga, may his soul rest in eternal peace, built a party that has stood firm for 20 years. ODM has survived storms, splits and betrayals, prove that ideology and consistency outlive personality cults. MC_Roma says most of the political parties are tribal-based. In fact, it's always associated with the region where the party leader hails from. Some of the briefcase parties meant to cut political deals. In Kenya, we lack parties with strong ideologies. The final one from Jeru says, it's clear that the end of once a powerful giant, ODM is nigh. ODM was Raila and Raila was ODM. He has rested, may his soul rest in eternal peace, and many careers have gone with him. History will remember them, but never to stand on their own again. Yes, Council, your final words.
Thank you, Ayub. I would like to say this, that ODM, as it stands today, still has what it takes. It still has what it takes to either form a coalition that is going to form the government, or probably to have a very powerful candidate in the next general election. The only problem that ODM is likely to face is when they decide to relax their muscle and allows the president to dictate the terms. They ought to put their house in order and come so compact that they call the shots, or that they then be in a position to negotiate on equal powers. And this is one of the things I foresee them discussing in today's meeting. I see them having a decision that now they need to move as one voice. They need to have a power in which now they can have a balance in the bargaining position of the next general election. So they still have what it takes. And I foresee, as I said, Ayub will be back here after the general election. You will see my...
God willing.
It's going to happen. God.
I appreciate it. Yes, Frank.
Yes.
Yeah, ideally, for ODM to strengthen, they should focus on having a strong take at 2027. Because my orientation and belief is that you are in a better position negotiating post-election, because you are going to the slaughterhouse with your own knife, and you're not going to rely, because as it looks like, they will end up with tribes and Matumbo cleaning them and all that. It's quite difficult. But let me give my parting shot this way. One is that a strong democracy requires strong political parties. And it therefore follows that strong politics cannot be developed from broken political parties. So at all costs, we cannot, advocate for broken political parties. But the challenge that we have, Ayub, is that strong political parties are based on strong institutions and not strong men. And ODM is becoming that good example of a party that was based on a strong man. But the challenge is not to the former or future or current strongmen. The challenge is to the Kenyans, that if we strongly believe that political parties are vehicles in a democracy, then we have to challenge ourselves. Are we mechanics for these vehicles, or are we passengers? Big mechanics means we must build these platforms to have ideas as platforms of ideas, as platforms of inclusion, as platforms of accountability. And that is what I would be telling Kenyans this morning. Become mechanics of political parties and not passengers.
Thank you. Appreciate it, gentlemen, your time, and many thanks for your presence here. Nelson Habi, many thanks. Dr. Barak Muluka, asante. Appreciate it. Council, thank you so much for your time. And Franklin, many thanks for your presence as well. Up next is Sporty Monday of what transpired in the local Premier League. Gor Mahia's 3-0 triumph and of course the dedication they made to their patron, the late Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and also the Glory Gunners who yesterday had gunned down Crystal Palace at the Emirates in North London. All that is up next on a Sporty Monday, and I'll see you tomorrow morning here on the broadcast. Till then, good morning. Welcome back, and you are watching The Bench. We are graced this evening by Paul Mwangi, an advocate of the High Court, and Raila Odinga's lawyer, the former Prime Minister who lost his life in India on Wednesday last week and buried on Sunday in Bondo, the county of Siaya. Many revolved around Odinga and his shoulders, I beg to say. And Paul was among the many blend of professionals who had fed from Odinga's trough and advised him on an array of issues, including the legal matters that were before the top court in the country after the elections in 2013, 17 and 22. Lovely having you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Abi.
Appreciated.
Asante sana.
For gracing us your presence here on the bench.
Asante sana.
Thank you. A lot to talk about.
Yes.
Since Odinga identified you first. So let's first scratch the surface before getting into your mind and telling us more about it. When did you first meet the former Prime Minister, and where and how?
First, I was identified from these studios. That's in 2011. We were running a show with, it was called the Kibaki Succession. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the everyday participants. It was on a Sunday.
Yeah.
The show was run by Julie Geshoro, and we used to come here every Sunday and discuss different aspects of the Kibaki succession.
Yeah.
And so I was a political analyst that time, and I had the following by that time. People liked my analysis. During that time, the Miguna was relieved of his duty.
Yeah.
And there was a question of whether they would get a replacement, because there was only, I think, 1.5 years to go at that time to
the election.
To the elections. And some people convinced Raila that he needed to put a replacement. And a gentleman who was his aide called Idris Abdurrahman convinced him that I was the best candidate for that. I knew Idris. And then Idris came to me and he told me, you know, I think you should replace Miguna. And I had never thought of that at all.
Yeah.
So I told him, give me some time, let me think about it. So I went, I asked around, I asked friends, and the reception was very hostile, very, very hostile. But some people, some level-headed people I talked to told me, you know, this is a privilege.
Okay.
It's not a simple thing to be asked to go and serve somebody the stature of Raila and to advise him. So in time then I got my nomination. Literally picked up, in fact, when it was announced we were coming for a show, they had to look for a quick replacement for me for that Sunday show. And then I went and enjoyed it. But when I joined, before I went to the office, he said he wanted to see me. Mm-hmm. And I went to his home in Karen. He sat me down for tea, and we started. Well, he was talking. He kind of wanted me to understand what he believes in, where he's coming from, Kenya's history. It was a meeting of more than 2 hours, just the two of us, and he talked and talked and talked. And I think that's when I started framing my mind about who I was going to work for.
Yeah.
And we started.
And that was your first meeting with him?
That was my first meeting. That's the first time I ever met him.
So before the current meeting, did he call you or?
I can't remember who is the one who called me or he said he wanted to see me, but yes, I ended up in Karen with him at his living room.
Yeah. Mm. What about him connected you to him specifically during that 2-hour-long meeting?
First, I had paid attention. You can imagine that from where I grew up, I hadn't grown hearing good things about him.
Yeah.
But the first time I paid attention to him was when he dealt with the Mau issue. And at that time there was when he came and said we have to save the Mao.
Yeah.
And I was a columnist then. I remember writing an article about it, and I applauded him for what I said was his whatever position on the environment.
Mm.
And then the more I thought about it and the risks he had taken to do that, and what it cost him, because I think that's one of the things that really cost him a lot of votes in North Rift. Then I started understanding that he held principled positions on issues, and that when he held a position on issues, he would stick with it regardless of the cost that he had to pay.
Yeah.
So I already had that in mind by the time I met him. Then during our talk, then I was surprised how much history he had. He knew everything about where this country had come from, about what we have been through. I'm a student of history, read a lot of history, do a lot of research. So he was in fact filling in a lot of my gaps in the knowledge about this country.
Yeah.
So I would say intellectually kicked off immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have mentioned there were some perceptions about him, specifically in your growing up times, and until then you realized that wasn't the real case when you met him physically. What was
because what had been portrayed and what was portrayed from Jaramogi and going on to him was that this is a person who wanted power at all costs, and it did not matter. The only thing he wanted ever to be was that's his father. All the thing he wanted to do was lead, and all he wanted to do was lead, and the good things about what him and his father had done were never talked about. It was never talked about that the colonialists had offered his father a chance to take over leadership of the country, and his father had refused and said, no, our true leader is Jomo Kenyatta, and you have to release him to come and lead government because he was the head of Kano. So all those things are not talked about politically. So I think now in time I started reflecting and understanding that a lot of this was, there was a lot of propaganda on them.
Yeah. Okay. So many have written about Odinga, Baba Femi, the Nigerian intellectual, Salim Lon, your colleague by Raila's side, who was his spokesperson, extensively wrote about Raila Odinga. But in terms of his ideological placing, where will you place the former Prime Minister? A social democrat, a liberal democrat, a communist?
Social democrat.
Social democrat. Yeah. And what values then did he envision, did he embody in that regard during the course of your being his counsel for that long?
You know, it's difficult to pigeonhole Raila into specific. He has a general view. He stands for liberty, he stands for democracy, stands for social welfare, but his specific position on issues depends a lot what is the issue on the table. And he has, in his inconsistency, he was very consistent. To the point that by the time you understand him, you never needed to ask him what his position on something is. If he was responding to a legal position or a lawsuit, I did not need to ask him what he thinks or what he wants to say. I would just write it down and then take it to him. I know my colleague Dennis Onyango also, he was a spokesperson, rarely ever had to ask him what he wants to say. When something crops up, you know exactly what he wants to say, and you know exactly what position he wants to take on the issue. Yeah.
Okay, so let's come to now the first election of 2013 after our first constitutional dispensation. And tell us behind the scenes events in the aftermath of the election and the first petition before the first Supreme Court in 2013.
Well, by the time we went to the election, a lot had already been laid down in my absence because I came in January of 2012. So you can imagine the structures were already in place. So I wasn't involved that much in what was happening until we got to the petition. And then when we went to the petition, I took over. That time, the senior counsel, Oralo, was the one who was leading the legal team. So my work was in arranging the evidence for the team So I was in the back room, and I had people who were helping me now come together with the documentation. We had a problem because IEBC refused to give us any documents. And somebody had to go to court, get orders. And by the time a lot of these documents were coming, we got into real problems because of the delay. The challenge for me, though, was that the person we were filing the petition against was Oburu Oginga, who's from Mount Kenya. And I am the one in charge of the evidence, and I'm from Mount Kenya. And there was a very interesting thing that happened, because people now were going to Karen to take documents to him. And one of those incidences, people came and brought evidence. So he told them, no, I want you to go to Capitol Hill and take this document and ask for Paul Mwangi and give him these documents. So they looked at him, they did not say anything, they left with their documents, and they did not bring them. So he kept calling, have those people, there's people who are bringing documents, have they come, have they come? And they never came. So I think then he realized, so he was told that they have a problem taking evidence against Uhuru Kenyatta to Paul Mwangi. So he called them, he told them, no, do this, just go, ask for Omondi, and give these documents to Omondi. Then he called me and he told me, those people are coming, they're bringing the documents, then they're going to ask for Omondi, and you are Omondi.
Okay.
So they came.
You have been codenamed. I
was codenamed. So they came, they asked for Omondi. I was called. By that time, everybody knew what was to happen. And so when I appeared, they came to them, they had one look at me, and they said, yeah, it is.
Omondi, these are the papers.
Yeah, Omondi. And that's how we got through it.
Yeah.
So he was alive to that those issues do happen, but never ever affected how he dealt with me.
And therefore brings us to the understanding, Council, of a man who had appreciated merit and qualification instead of ethnic belonging, is it, or religious affiliation?
He had no regard for ethnicity. Absolutely. And he did. It didn't. At some point, people thought that I was getting special favors because I was from a different ethnicity, and therefore he didn't want me touched. But he never gave me any special favors. He expected you to fight your wars. And that sometimes those wars came. Sometimes they took ethnic angles, and there was a time it really got bad. So I went and asked some people who had been there with him for longer than me, outside the office. And I told them, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. They said, no, if you go to him, he told me, if you go to him, he will tell you must learn how to swim with the sharks. Because his political field was cutthroat. So he'll just tell you to learn how to swim with the sharks. And so I had to learn how to swim with the sharks. You give as much as you get. And then at some point, it also got really bad again, and I had to go to a colleague and ask him, okay, is it that PM cannot see how I'm being fought? He said, no, he's seeing, but he thinks you can handle it. But have no doubt, if he will not let anybody take you down.
And how was it surviving in the jungle?
You have to have a very thick skin. You had to learn to survive, and he expected you to learn to survive. And once you got up to speed, then you gave as much as good as you got. And you earned his respect for it. He hated whiners. If you went whining to him about how you are being fought, you would lose his respect.
Then the petition started.
The petition came, and maybe I can tell you now about, because when the documents finally came from IEBC, the petition had already started. So we didn't have enough time to go through everything and arrange. We are done with everything we could have, but now we had the real documents. But as we were going through them, we noticed that there were places where voter turnout was more than 100%. So I told the team, let's just go through this, get me anything that has more than 100% voter turnout. And we managed to come up with many polling stations where voter was more than 100%. And we are actually able to put aside 80,000 votes, because the law said that if the voter turnout is more than 100%, the entire result of that polling station is cancelled. So that's what ended up in that, what is called the 800-page affidavit. And therefore it was a winner. It was a runoff. Because once the Jubilee had won with 3,000 something votes.
TNA, Jubilee Coalition.
Yeah, yes, the TNA coalition. Yeah. So they had won with 3,000 votes, above the 50+1. And we had the evidence that was by law knocking out 80,000 votes. That was the affidavit that was rejected.
Yeah, 800-page.
The 800-page. There was so much anger from ODM about what happened to us then.
And how long did it take you to come up with all that? Was it team effort or?
Oh yeah, there was a very big team, very young lawyers. We were at Capitol Hill. So, because we needed a lot of labor. It was a 24-hour drill. So we went to I called out to the universities, took out law students, had a team of, could have been almost close to 50 students. And they're the ones who were just going through everything. So within a day, we had this affidavit. And it was filed the next day. And that's when Senior Counsel Raila was asking that it be admitted. But it was not admitted. Yeah.
And what was Odinga's response?
He moved on. He never stopped to mourn.
Yeah.
Once it happens, you go to the next thing.
Yeah. And after the final verdict?
Yeah, we moved on. That's it. He accepted. On the day that the verdict was announced, so we all were at Prime Minister's office. Everybody was crying. Paul. And at some point, he now got irritated. Why are you crying for me? Go cry for yourself. It's us. Everybody's the country that has lost. So don't make it like it's a personal loss to me. It's a personal loss to you too.
Yeah. And before that, there was the art of the coalition building at the time, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy.
CORD was already the discussions were already taking place by the time I got there.
Yeah.
So I didn't get involved in that. And also I'd only been there for like 1 year, 1.25 years. So there's a lot of issues I'd already not started getting involved in. My real involvement in his issues started after
the election.
After the elections, because after the elections, then which are some of the saddest moments in his political life, because after that, then everybody took off. Everybody.
2013.
Yes. So there were a few close political associates of his, but the rest of the mob, Prime Minister's office was a den of activity.
Yeah.
And we just woke up one day and he was at Capitol, and nothing apart from the few close political people who were there. Everybody else was gone. So we had formed, there was a few members of staff, his aides had followed him. Dennis Onyango had followed him, and let me tell you, while this was happening, Raila was busy talking to Jubilee to get us jobs. After he's lost the election to them, and he had all this group of professionals and people who were working for government, and he was busy just trying to negotiate. No, please, these people, don't drop them. Please place them places. They have families. Some people managed. Some were offered jobs. I know some people just said, no, we can't. Not because they didn't want to, but they felt we can't leave Mzee alone. And that's how I ended up. So my colleague Dennis called me and said, we have to help. We have to help Mzee.
Okay.
So I now came back outside now as a volunteer. And we said, if we don't do this, Mzee will be left alone. And the very bad experiences started, but then we stuck it out with him.
Yeah.
Since from that time, yes.
Okay. Many events happened between 2013 after Kenyatta and Ruto were sworn in on the 10th of April 2013 to the election in 2017. What were the most significant events between that period for you as his counsel?
First, before I'm telling now, we had this period where nobody is coming, so we all have to report there. I had gone back to my law practice, but now we had to make sure that you divide your time, because you'll have to come, say hi, find out whether there is anything needed. We had nothing we were doing then. Then a kind of a system of humiliation had started with him. And the government officers took any chance they got to humiliate him. He would go to the airport and they would deny him access to the VIP room, so that they want to see him sitting with Wananchi. Or he would fly in from wherever he was, and they would want to see him lining up with everybody else. So they took him through a very difficult period, until some friends said, no, you know, Mzee, please, you need to get out of there. So that's when he took the small break that he took to America.
Yeah. That was in 2014?
I think that's around 2014.
Away for some 3 months.
Yes. And once he left, now Jubilee came down in this full force.
Yeah.
And people started crying, because nobody was talking, there was nobody to protest. People tried to fill in those shoes, they could not be filled. You call a press statement, for a press statement, find its way into page 10. It was there, it would immediately be the first item of news. And that's why people started...
Baba, while you are away.
No, people now started flying to the US and telling, no, you have to come back. You really have to come back, because otherwise we are finished.
Were you among the people who traveled?
No, I did travel. And that's when he agreed to come back. And Baba, while you were away, was the relief that people felt to know that he's back. That was a feeling, that everybody's father has come back. You're not good, you're now protected.
Yeah. Historian John Kamau had articulated the same about the former Prime Minister, and how prison and detention had hardened him in the years that he was behind bars, and thereafter even changing his philosophy, thinking about reforms and the needed push. After he was mistreated, as you have mentioned, what was his thinking for the state that he served as a statesman, as a Democrat, being the Prime Minister some few months, 1 year back? What was his feeling, his response to the mistreatment?
He brushed such things aside. I told you he was not a whiner, and he hated whining. So he would not sit down to start to regurgitate what the wrongs that are being done. He would always look forward. He wanted, let's look ahead. Let's look at what has happened has already happened. Forget about it. Let's look at what we're going to do tomorrow. And in fact, during the meeting that was held, you remember the very, very charged meeting. It was almost dangerous. And he realized how angry people were. And but he didn't, people wanted like some kind of revenge to what they thought they had been taken through in his absence. And he was looking at, where do we go from here? I'm back now. Let's think about where we are going to go from here. And that's how the idea of after that meeting was held, he now called his think tanks. And he said, you saw the people, can you think about where we go from here? And then we now had to sit down. There was a lot of, and Sabasaba was coming, I think, after that. And there was fear about what was going to happen on Sabasaba, because the emotions were very, very low. And they were all different kinds. You know, his field had everybody. There were revolutionaries, there are diplomats, there are anarchists. So the common thing that we all agreed on is that the best thing to do is go for reform. And a lot of this reform will have to take the form of constitutional change. And that's how we now came with Okoa Kenya.
And afterwards, the the signatures were deemed by the IEBC as not valid?
Because what we did, we went around the country, started the initiative. We came up with the books and sent out for signatures. The bill, we prepared the bill was ready. When we sent out the books, there are many people who did not respond, as had been expected. So the books were trickling back. Some people did very good work, sent the books back immediately. But we got to a point where now, as a committee, we were through with our work. The bill was ready. We are ready to go to IEBC. So they now started making phone calls and asking people for the books. Some people had not done anything. So when their books came, it was not trustworthy, which also came out later, what was in those books, because it's an exercise they're not taken seriously. So we said, my worry was, are we going to have a million signatures? And I advised him, let's go through all these books with a voter register and identify which are the signatures that we are relying on, and know whether we have a shot. And if we have a shot, let's go back to the field and fill out whatever shot there might be. So we started that exercise. We opened a secretariat, had 50 computer terminals, put in people with a 12-hour shift from morning. Everybody was coming on 12 hours, so it was a 24-hour business. Every terminal had a voter register, and you are allocated books, and you have to go through your register, your signatures, and ensure every signature is a registered voter. So we kept knocking out but it was taking a lot of time. So the politicians came in, and everybody would, no, this is taking too long, this is taking too long. So I kept saying, no, we can't take those books without being 100% sure that we have a million signatures. But it took so long at some point. Now as you are a professional, you're not a politician, so you start looking like a stumbling block. And they said, no, IBC is not going to look at this. No, everybody was telling him, IBC will not look at this thing. Trust me, PM, they will look at every signature. But somewhere along the way now, the politicians split the exercise. And they said, okay, Paul, you go deal with your bill. And make sure the bill is ready. You leave this to us. And so me and my team went to finalize the bill and do everything else. We left the signature business to politicians. And at some point they said, no, IBC is not going to look at this thing. So they put everything together and told them, we are ready. So we went to IBC and they dumped it. And they believed that IBC was not going to go through them. Well, IBC went through them.
That was in 2016?
2015, 2016, yes.
16, before Isaac Hassan's removal from office.
Yes.
How did
then it turned out that we were about 130 or so signatures less, which means if we had identified that, all we needed to do was go back to the field and take another 100.
Add on to that,
But politicians won the day.
At the time, that also coincided with the reforms that the Prime Minister was leading for the IEBC to undertake before the elections in 2017.
Yes, there were specific reforms that had been... Well, his relationship with Isaac had gone sour during the elections. We were in... the night before the elections were announced, we were in... there was a command